Chapter 346. Without a doubt, the news of the 10 Kings banquet spread throughout the entire eternal graveyard. This time, the entire eternal graveyard seemed to be about to explode. When all the living beings of the graveyard heard this news for the first time, their first reaction was, "Are you king kidding me?" Then, after understanding the real situation, they were tongue-tied in disbelief. One of the 10 little king-level prodigies was enough to sweep through a region. They were the top of a region. But now, even if the kings joined forces, they couldn't hurt Jun Xiaoyaro at all. Some of them were even killed. To the living beings of the graveyard, this was no different from a bolt from the blue. However, after learning that Jun Xiaoyaro was also an invincible prodigy in the outside world, their mood calmed down a little. If the prodigies of the outside world were all as monstrous as Jun Xiaoyaro, then these living beings of the graveyard would be even more affected. After the 10 Kings banquet ended, Jun Xiaoyaro still stayed with Lang Huan. In a few days, they would head to the graveyard rift together. Jun Xiaoyaro could also complete the sign-in mission. In the luxurious room of the ship, Jun Xiaoyaro casually leaned against the edge of the bed. Qin Xiana and Lang Huan were massaging Jun Xiaoyao's shoulders. The two girls' soft hands were massaging Jun Xiaoyao's shoulders rhythmically. It was very comfortable. If it was before, although Lang Huan liked Jun Xiaoyaro, she would definitely not do such a thing as a maid. But at the 10 Kings banquet, after witnessing Jun Xiaoyao's domineering strength, her heart completely melted. Originally, her personality was very domineering and she wanted to ride on Jun Xiaoyaro. But now, she was always fantasizing about being ridden by Jun Xiaoyaro. The fiercer the better. It would be best if he could break her. Lang Huan didn't know why her mentality had changed so drastically. Perhaps it was because the men she had met in the past were all servile to her, no different from dogs. And Jun Xiaoyaro was the first person to be so domineering in front of her. In Lang Huan's heart, a strange hobby was awakened. "Young Master Jun, do you think they will let you enter the burial realm safely?" Lang Huan asked as she massaged Jun Xiaoyao's shoulders. She had already begun to think about Jun Xiaoyaro. "It doesn't matter. If they want to stop us, I'll let them know what despair is," Jun Xiaoyaro said. He knew that he had killed the prodigies of the 8-armed spider demons and the blood fiend tribe. They would not let him off easily. Let alone allowing Jun Xiaoyaro to enter the burial realm, there was even a possibility that they wanted to kill Jun Xiaoyaro. But Jun Xiaoyaro didn't care. Jun Xiaoyaro would make them understand the meaning of regret if they dared to make a move. Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's cold and domineering words, Lang Huan's heart melted. Water flowed out of the peach blossom spring. Well, he was just describing the scenery. There was absolutely no other meaning behind it. "You're wet." Jun Xiaoyaro looked down. "Yes." Lang Huan's voice was as soft as a mosquito's. Her delicate face was dyed pink. "Then hurry up and get down. Don't wet my bed." Jun Xiaoyaro swung his hand and pushed Lang Huan away. "Lang Huan? This F***K is a straight man of steel. Even a beautiful woman like Lang Huan couldn't help but want to curse. He was clearly a handsome little puppy on the outside, but he had the heart of a straight man of steel. Beside her, Qin Xiana couldn't help but burst out laughing. She realized that she didn't hate Jun Xiaoyaro as much as she did at the beginning. This handsome young master was usually ruthless and didn't say much, but sometimes he was quite interesting and cute. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro was leisurely waiting to enter the burial realm, the other kings, such as Long Xiong, Mo Ling, Ju Yuao, and the other prodigies of the burial realm, were thinking of ways to improve their strength. At the same time, they were thinking about how to stop Jun Xiaoyaro from entering. The 8-armed spider demons, the blood evil tribe, and other powerful forces had reached a consensus that they absolutely couldn't let a foreign prodigy enter the burial realm. Even if such a rule didn't exist before, they had to create such a rule. On the other side, on a lonely peak in the Hall of Pluto, Chu Tianba was sitting cross-legged. The reason why he didn't attend the banquet wasn't because of himself, but because someone had stopped him. In the void in front of him, there was a semi-illusory projection. But even if it was just a projection, it had a terrifying power that could crush all the worlds. This blurry projection was the lord of the Hall of Pluto, the Tianming burial emperor. As for Chu Tianba, as the ancient overlord body and the strongest prodigy of the Hall of Pluto, he was also the disciple of the Tianming burial emperor. Master, why don't you let me go and compete with the sacred body of the ancients? Chu Tianba was reluctant. He originally wanted to compete with Jun Xiaoyaro at the Feast of the 10 Kings. But his master, the Tianming burial emperor, had stopped him. That son of God of the Jun family is something you may not know, but in the Huangtian mystic realm, he is the most famous person of the younger generation. Even the ancient freaks were defeated by him, the Tianming burial emperor said. Master, do you think that my overlord body is inferior to the sacred body of the son of God of the Jun family? Chu Tianba gritted his teeth. In the past, every overlord body of the firmament had a domineering personality. So, Chu Tianba couldn't stand being suppressed by Jun Xiaoyaro. Now, there were rumors in the Tianming realm that Chu Tianba didn't dare to attend the banquet because he was afraid of the son of God of the Jun family. This was unacceptable to Chu Tianba. Of course, I believe in you. If you had a complete overlord body, you would be able to compete with the Jun family's prodigy. But now, you are incomplete. The only way is to enter the burial realm and find the reincarnation pool of living beings. This great opportunity is enough for your tyrant body to recover and even baptize and sublimate. When the time comes, it will be easy for you to suppress the sacred body of the Jun family. Hearing the Tianming burial emperor's words, Chu Tianba was relieved. It turned out that the Tianming burial emperor had already thought of a way for him. Thank you for your consideration, master. But if the Jun family's prodigy also enters the burial realm, then... Chu Tianba stopped. He thought that Jun Xiaoyaro might stop him from obtaining the opportunity. After all, the two bodies were natural enemies. Jun Xiaoyaro wouldn't be stupid enough to let him recover his overlord body. The Tianming burial emperor said faintly, "Don't worry. Killing the Jun family's prodigy might bring about some karma. But if you stop him from entering the burial realm, it won't be difficult. The Palace of Hades will take care of this." After hearing the Tianming burial emperor's words, Chu Tianba was finally completely relieved. The sacred body of the Jun family, wait until my overlord body is completely restored. What will you use to fight me? In this life, I will be the overlord body of the firmament. Chu Tianba's ambition was as clear as day. He wanted to use the name of the overlord body of the firmament to completely crush the sacred body of the ancient. Just as the entire 10 regions of the eternal burial earth were in turmoil because of the burial realm. In a dark palace in the Senluo region, a beautiful figure in a long black dress was sitting on a white bone throne. Among the 10 region lords of the 10 regions of the eternal burial earth, there was a legendary existence. The creatures of the eternal burial earth called her the ghost-masked burial emperor. Chapter 347. As everyone knew, the 10 regions of the eternal burial earth, each region had a region lord. For example, the dark nether region was the fallen winged race's burial emperor. The Azura region was the Azura demon kingdom's ruler. And the heavenly nether region was the dark nether palace's dark nether burial emperor. However, within these 10 regions, there was one that was extremely special. That was the Senluo region. The other few region lords were all undying powers rulers. As for the Senluo region's region lord, she was a loner, without any power. The most important thing was, the Senluo region's region lord was a woman. No one knew her real name, and she had never shown her face to anyone. This was because she always wore a ghost face mask on her face. Hence, the living beings of the 10 regions all called her ghost-masked female burial emperor. However, the most praiseworthy thing about the ghost-masked female burial emperor was her strength. A long time ago, the ghost-masked female burial emperor was already the ruler of the Senluo region, and no one was able to threaten her position. There were also other burial emperors who wanted to challenge the ghost-masked female burial emperor, but they all died tragically. Hence, there were people who ranked the 10 region lords, and the ghost-masked female burial emperor was without a doubt holding the first position. Even the Dark Nether Palace's Dark Nether burial emperor could only be ranked second. From this, it could be seen that the ghost-masked female burial emperor had a high status and prestige in the eternal burial earth. At this moment, in a dark palace in the Senluo region. On the white bone throne, the ghost-masked female burial emperor sat on it. She wore a black dress, wrapped around her slender and proud jade body. Her skin was like snow, sparkling with light. Her hair was casually draped over her shoulders, giving the female burial emperor a mysterious and lazy charm. Although she wore a ghost face mask on her face, but just from her figure, she was definitely a peerless beauty, a beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. In the Eternal Burial Earth's beauty rankings by some nosy people, the ghost-masked female burial emperor was the only one who didn't show her face, and just her aura alone was enough to mesmerize everyone. Even the world's most beautiful Lang Huan could only be ranked second after the ghost-masked female burial emperor. At this moment, the ghost-masked female burial emperor's jade fingers tapped on the throne's armrest. Her emotions seemed to have fallen into a faint fluctuation. This was unbelievable to the ghost-masked female burial emperor. Ever since she had awakened her consciousness, she had always been alone. She had never felt lonely. She had always been a high and mighty female burial emperor who looked down on all living things coldly. Only occasionally, in some fragmented memories, would some scenes flashed past like a merry-go-round. For example, the back of a white-robed youth would appear, holding the hand of a little girl. The little girl was holding a grimace mask that looked like it was laughing and crying at the same time. Whose karma is this? Is it mine? The ghost-masked female burial emperor muttered to herself. Her voice was soft and gentle with a hint of hoarseness, full of magnetism. Why do I feel so uneasy during this period of time? Is something about to happen? The ghost-masked female burial emperor was slightly absent-minded. She slowly raised her jade-like hand, holding a sachet in her palm. If Jun Xiaoyaro was here, he would definitely be surprised. The sachet in the hands of the ghost-masked female burial emperor was exactly the same as the one he had obtained in the lower realm. And that sachet came from a ghost-masked female burial emperor on the martyr's altar. The red spider lily blooms in the seven-colored sky, and the flower falls to become an immortal for 1,000 years. Has my karma arrived? If so, then the only person is the Jun family's Heaven's Pride who has stirred up endless storms recently. The ghost-masked female burial emperor's gaze was faint under the mask. She naturally knew that Jun Xiaoyaro had stirred up a storm in the 10 regions of Eternal Burial Earth. It seems that I have to go personally, the ghost-masked female burial emperor murmured. The entire Palace of Darkness fell into silence. A few days passed. The day of entering the burial earth also arrived. Many burial earth creatures set off, preparing to head to the edge of the burial earth. Even if they did not have the qualifications to enter, it was still good to join in the fun. Jun Xiaoyaro and the others also set off. With Lang Huan arranging the itinerary, Jun Xiaoyaro did not have to worry about anything. He only needed to wait quietly. The burial earth was the core of the 10 regions of burial earth. It was at the extreme north of the Tianming territory, bordering the burial earth. That was where the crack was located. It was a dangerous place filled with the aura of death. The ground was crimson. It was not naturally formed. Instead, it was as if it had been dyed red by blood after a great battle. The skeletons of various unknown creatures were scattered all over. It could be said that ordinary burial earth creatures would not dare to come to the burial earth if they did not have enough courage and confidence. More than 10 years ago, after the burial earth was sealed, this place was even more deserted. But today, this area, which was originally dead and desolate, was extremely lively. Many forces of the burial earth gathered together. In the sky, all kinds of bone dragons and skeleton birds pulled carriages. On the ground, there were also many burial earth creatures rushing over, densely packed like a colony of ants. They came here not only to see the fun in the burial earth. There was a more important reason, which was the battle between Jun Xiaoyaro and the ancient overlord body of the Nether King Palace. This battle was very eye-catching. To some extent, this represented the battle between the strongest Heaven's Pride of the Huangtian mystic realm and the strongest Heaven's Pride of the 10 regions of Eternal Burial Earth. It was naturally eye-catching. Rumble. In the sky, all kinds of sounds came. It was the arrival of the kings. Long Xiong of the Corpse Dragon clan, Mo Ling of the sky-devouring demonic python clan, the 9 Serenities AO, the Bloodfiend tribe, and other creatures had all come. Their auras were much stronger than before. Obviously, in this short period of time, they had all received some kind of strengthening. Especially the 9 Serenities AO, it did not make a move at the 10 Kings banquet, so no one could detect its background. In addition, those forces whose heaven's prides were killed by Jun Xiaoyao, such as the 8-armed spider demon clan and the corpse refining sect, had also come. Their purpose was naturally to prevent Jun Xiaoyao from entering the burial earth with all their strength. At this moment, the earth suddenly shook, and a pitch-black giant crossed the mountain ridge. It's the giant demonic puppet of the Nether King Palace. The Nether King Palace is finally here. When they saw the pitch-black giant, there was an uproar. The Nether King Palace was one of the strongest forces in the Eternal Burial Earth, and its leader, the Tianming Burial Emperor, was also a top powerhouse of the Burial Earth. At this moment, a group of people stood on the giant demonic puppet. The leader stood on top of the giant demonic puppet's head. It was a well-built man with bronze-colored muscles that were covered in cracks. His black hair was scattered and fluttered in the wind. His face was rough, and the scene of stars falling from the sky appeared in his eyes. His entire person carried an arrogant and domineering aura, showing off his sharpness. This well-built young man's aura was very shocking, and he had an invincible aura that could sweep through everything. Who else could it be but Chu Tianba? His finally here, the leader of the 10 minor kings, the ancient overlord body, Chu Tianba. Seeing Chu Tianba's arrival, all of the burial earth creatures were excited. There was no other reason than that Chu Tianba was the heaven's pride who had the highest chance of defeating Jun Xiaoyao and reclaiming the burial earth's reputation. Where is the Jun family's sacred body? Chu Tianba's eyes looked around, and his gaze was sharp and disdainful. Seeing Chu Tianba's domineering aura, all of the burial earth creatures present were so excited that their hearts trembled. The ancient overlord body was forever a god. Just as all of the burial earth creatures were in a state of ecstasy. A cold voice with a hint of playfulness suddenly resounded. You're just a mere crippled body, and you're in such a hurry to die. As the voice rang out, a luxurious ship came through the air from afar. A figure that looked like a white-robed immortal stepped on the sky. Sacred body, overlord body, fated enemies. They finally met. Chapter 348. Jun Xiaoyao, the sacred body of the ancients. Chu Tianba, the tyrant body of the heavens. One of them was the son of God of the Jun family, the invincible son of God of the Huangtian mystic realm. The other was the top genius of the 10 minor kings of the 10 domains of the ancient burial ground. The meeting of the two stirred up a storm and attracted the attention of countless people. Many of the people present froze when they heard Chu Tianba mention the sacred body of the Jun family. I didn't hear wrong. Chu Tianba said the sacred body of the Jun family. The son of God of the Jun family has the legendary sacred body of the ancients. Yes, that should be it. No wonder the Jun family's son of God's body is so strong that even the corpse dragon clan can't beat it. It turns out that he has the unparalleled sacred body of the ancients. But didn't the sacred body of the ancients become useless? How can the Jun family's son of God still be so strong? Who knows? Monsters can't be measured by common sense. After learning that Jun Xiaoyao had the sacred body of the ancients, it caused an uproar. Before this, almost no one knew that Jun Xiaoyao had the sacred body of the ancients. After all, the ancient burial ground and the mystic realm were very isolated. Only top forces like the Hall of Hades could find out about the outside world. Ordinary creatures of the burial ground didn't know what happened in the mystic realm. However, after knowing, the creatures of the burial ground became even more excited. This was a battle between a sacred body and a tyrant body that was rarely seen in 10,000 years. Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's contemptuous words, Chu Tianba also said coldly, "Crippled body. What right do you have to say such things when you're called a useless body of the ancients?" Chu Tianba's words were not without reason. It was a well-known fact that the sacred body of the ancients and the tyrant body of the heavens had been enemies since ancient times. In historical records, both sides had won and lost. However, as the ancient era came, 10 shackles fell from the sky and limited the growth of the sacred body of the ancients. Gradually, the tyrant body felt like it was going to suppress the sacred body. This was also the reason why Chu Tianba was so confident. In the ancient times, the sacred body of the ancients was naturally inferior to the hegemonic body of the heavens. It was difficult for the sacred body of the ancients to grow, let alone cultivate it to full completion. Hearing Chu Tianba's words, everyone present faintly agreed. Even Lang Huan, Qin Xiana, and the others who stood on Zhun Xiaoyao's side had to admit that the sacred body of the ancients was indeed known as a useless body. However, Zhun Xiaoyao wanted to laugh when he heard this. How shallow was Chu Tianba's vision? He didn't know that Zhun Xiaoyao had already broken 10 shackles since birth. If all went well, Zhun Xiaoyao would definitely be able to attain an accomplished sacred body of the ancients in the future. This was almost a done deal. At that time, even the overlord body would be suppressed by him. A frog in a well can't talk about the sea, and a summer insect can't talk about the ice. What else can I say to a short-sighted person like you? Just be obedient, lie back in your coffin, and don't crawl out. Zhun Xiaoyao's casual words made Chu Tianba's aura surge. He was like an angry lion. The tyrant body of the firmament had a domineering personality. How could he tolerate this kind of provocation? Especially Zhun Xiaoyao. Although he usually didn't talk much, when he spoke, it was enough to anger people to death. Previously, many geniuses had already experienced Zhun Xiaoyao's viciousness. You're courting death. Chu Tianba couldn't help but want to attack. Don't worry. The opportunity in the burial realm is the most important. Once your tyrant body is completely recovered, dealing with him will be a piece of cake. On the side, a powerhouse from the Hall of Pluto stopped Chu Tianba and transmitted his voice. Although the people from the Hall of Pluto were very confident in Chu Tianba, Zhun Xiaoyao was indeed not to be underestimated. They naturally wouldn't make such a low-level mistake like underestimating the enemy. Hearing this, Chu Tianba was a little reluctant, but he still didn't attack. You don't dare to attack. Seeing that Chu Tianba had stopped, Zhun Xiaoyao didn't hold back and directly exposed him. You, Page, in the burial realm, I will fight with you. Chu Tianba's face was cold. It was only natural that he and Zhun Xiaoyao would fight one another. Zhun Xiaoyao didn't care. To be honest, Zhun Xiaoyao didn't have much interest in this kind of incomplete tyrant body. Defeating him wouldn't bring him any satisfaction. All right, prepare to enter. The powerhouse from the Hall of Pluto coldly looked at Zhun Xiaoyao, then said to Chu Tianba. In the depths of the void, there was a spatial crack. It was a crack in the burial realm. Other than this crack, ordinary burial realm creatures couldn't enter the sealed burial realm. Looking at the spatial crack, Zhun Xiaoyao vaguely had a strange feeling. It was as if something was calling out to him. Just as Zhun Xiaoyao was about to enter, the powerhouse from the Hall of Pluto icily said, "What are you doing?" Zhun Xiaoyao's eyebrows rose slightly. He wasn't surprised at all. Entering the burial realm. You're just a heavenly genius from the outside world. Do you have the qualifications to enter the burial realm? That's right. Outsiders don't have the qualifications to enter the burial realm, said the 8-armed spider devil race's expert. Their race's heavenly geniuses had been killed by Zhun Xiaoyao. They naturally hated Zhun Xiaoyao. But when they thought of Zhun Xiaoyao's background, they didn't dare attack him alone. Perhaps the 8-armed spider devil race would be exterminated. That's right. I also think outsiders can't enter the burial realm. The burial realm is an opportunity for us burial realm creatures, said the corpse refining sect's expert. The other major powers of the burial ground also objected to it. Other than the Azura Devil Nation, there wasn't a single power that stood on Zhun Xiaoyao's side. It could be seen that these burial realm creatures were still very disgusted by Zhun Xiaoyao's actions in the burial realm. I don't think you had such a rule before. In the face of unanimous opposition, Zhun Xiaoyao was still calm. He didn't show the slightest trace of anger. We didn't before, but now we do, said the heaven-devouring devil python race's expert. Mo Ling crossed her arms in front of her chest and sneered at Zhun Xiaoyao. Who asked you to be arrogant? Now you're powerless. Indeed, because of Zhun Xiaoyao's background, They didn't dare attack Jun Xiaoyao. But if they just wanted to stop him from entering the burial realm, it couldn't be any simpler. Long Xiong, Mo Ling, the 9 Nether Ao, and the other heavenly geniuses were all watching coldly from the sidelines. If they could stop Jun Xiaoyao from entering the burial realm, it would be beneficial to them. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen people as shameless as you. Jun Xiaoyao shook his head. It was one thing for them to be sore losers, but they were even acting shamelessly. The living beings of the eternal burial realm were nothing more than this. I admit that your background is shocking, but this is the burial realm. We should abide by the rules of the burial realm, said the Nether King Palace's expert expressionlessly. They obeyed the Sky Nether Burial Emperor's order to stop Jun Xiaoyao from entering the burial realm. A cold light flashed in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes. The 9 Wonders reincarnation immortal grass might be in the burial realm. Jun Xiaoyao must enter the burial realm. The world is vast, but no one dares to stop this son of God. Can you bear the price? Jun Xiaoyao waved his sleeves, his tone cold. For a moment, his aura made the burial realm's experts feel suffocated. Just as Jun Xiaoyao was about to use his ultimate move, the void suddenly shattered. Space suddenly shattered as a slender, jade-like hand broke through space and slammed towards the expert from the Nether King Hall. The Nether King Palace's expert didn't even have time to react. He didn't even have time to scream before he was smashed into a bloody pulp. The atmosphere instantly froze. Everyone was stunned. Chapter 349. This sudden scene was out of everyone's expectations. All of the burial earth beings present felt their brains short-circuit and they couldn't react in time. The expert from the Nether King Palace, who was high and mighty a moment ago, was smashed into a bloody pulp. However, what shocked everyone wasn't the death of the expert from the Nether King Palace. It was the person who attacked. A peerless figure slowly stepped out from the broken space. A black dress fluttered in the wind and wrapped around Linglong's proud figure. Her hair fluttered in the wind and her skin was as smooth as snow. She looked like a beauty carved out of cold jade. She wore a ghost mask on her face and no one could see her face. The person who attacked was the domain lord of the Senluo region, the ghost-masked female burial emperor. Her aura was extremely terrifying and brought with it a supreme pressure that caused the surrounding space to tremble. Although she wore a ghost mask on her face, her eyes seemed to contain the terrifying scene of the sun being destroyed and the stars sinking. Her aura was extremely shocking. It's the domain lord of the Senluo region. Why did the ghost-masked female burial emperor appear? The appearance of the ghost-masked female burial emperor caused an uproar and exclamations of shock could be heard everywhere. This was because everyone was too shocked. The ghost-masked female burial emperor was extremely mysterious and cold in the hearts of the burial earth beings. Although all of the burial earth beings had heard of the ghost-masked female burial emperor, very few of them had actually seen her. Furthermore, the ghost-masked female burial emperor did not say that she belonged to her own faction, so the chances of her entering the world were even lower. 99% of the beings present were seeing the ghost-masked female burial emperor for the first time. As for why they could recognize her at a glance, it was naturally because of the ghost mask. In the burial earth, no one dared to wear the same mask. This was because there was once a genius who wore a similar mask and his entire clan was killed by the ghost-masked female burial emperor. Since then, no one dared to wear the same mask. Heavens, the ghost-masked female burial emperor actually appeared. Why is this happening? The most important thing is that she killed the expert from the Nether King Palace. Everyone present was still in deep shock. The ghost-masked female burial emperor's actions were swift and decisive. Her cold gaze turned towards the 8-armed spider demon race's experts. You guys also objected just now. The female burial emperor's frosty voice caused the 8-armed spider devil clan's powerhouses to feel as though they had fallen into an ice cave. Even if it was a holy lord-level powerhouse, in front of the ghost-masked female burial emperor, they were as small and insignificant as ants. No, without waiting for the 8-armed spider demon clan's expert to explain, the ghost-masked female burial emperor had already pointed out a finger. The terrifying beam of death pierced through the void, and a large black hole appeared on the heads of a group of 8-armed spider demon clan experts. Corpses fell from the sky one after another. And you guys? The ghost-masked female burial emperor's gaze once again turned to the Rakshasa clan, undead spirit clan, and the others. The reason being that the geniuses of these tribes had all been killed by Jun Xiaoyaro at the 10 Emperors Feast. Naturally, they hated Jun Xiaoyaro even more. The experts of the two races were so shocked that their souls almost left their bodies. They retreated quickly and shouted at the same time, "Ghost-masked female burial emperor, as the burial Earth's emperor, why are you helping an outsider?" The angry shouts of the experts of the two races did not stop the ghost-masked female burial emperor from killing. She attacked once again. As her jade-like palm struck out, the galaxy overturned, heaven and earth turned upside down, and the void boiled. Various kinds of death aura and the law of death intertwined. In the void, blood-red spider lilies bloomed one after another. Those were the lives of the powerhouses withering away. The entire place was dead silent. Seeing this scene, all the living beings of the burial earth could not make a sound. Although death was not a taboo in the eternal burial earth, it was still very shocking to see such a massacre with their own eyes. Is this the strength of the ghost-masked female burial emperor? One of the living beings of the burial earth muttered to himself. Not only the holy lords, but even a few quasi-supreme powerhouses could not withstand a single blow from the ghost-masked female burial emperor. Of course, what shocked everyone the most was not the strength of the ghost-masked female burial emperor. Instead, why did she help Jun Xiaoyaro? Oh my god, don't tell me that even the ghost-masked female burial emperor was conquered by the appearance of the Jun family's genius. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. What kind of existence is the ghost-masked female burial emperor? How could she be so superficial? Then tell me, why would the ghost-masked female burial emperor help the Jun family's genius? I can't figure it out, I can't figure it out at all. The surrounding people could not help but whisper to each other. It was because they could not understand the ghost-masked female burial emperor's actions. Think about it. A female powerhouse that had only been heard of in legends suddenly appeared and killed a living being of the same realm for an outsider's genius. This did not make sense. Could it be that she was really conquered by the appearance of the Jun family's genius? Some people could not help but think this way. Because other than this reason, they could not think of any other reason. Comparing strength, although Jun Xiaoyaro was a monster of the younger generation, it was impossible for an expert like the ghost-masked female burial emperor to put him in her eyes. The only thing that could be praised was his appearance. Oh my god, it can't be, even the ghost-masked female burial emperor is going to fall in the hands of this outsider kid. The female burial emperor is ranked first on the burial earth's beauty list. Even Princess Lang Huan is only ranked second. Are the first and second beauties of the burial earth going to be ruined by this kid? Envy, jealousy, hatred. Many of the male geniuses present had bloodshot eyes. They were so jealous that they were about to go crazy. Not only did the world's most beautiful Princess Lang Huan crazily throw herself at Jun Xiaoyaro. Even the mysterious and aloof burial earth's legend, the ghost-masked female burial emperor, had actually taken action to protect Jun Xiaoyaro. Lemon essence. Today, all the male creatures of the burial earth had become lemon essences. It can't be, the female burial emperor is also going to snatch the little puppy from this princess, right? Even Lang Huan was shocked. In an instant, a strong sense of vigilance and danger rose in her heart. A woman like the ghost-masked female burial emperor was actually the most attractive to a young man like Jun Xiaoyaro. After all, who wouldn't want to say, "Auntie, I don't want to work hard anymore"? With the ghost-masked female burial emperor supporting him, Jun Xiaoyaro could almost do whatever he wanted in the eternal burial earth. It would be a waste not to eat this soft rice. Therefore, in Lang Huan's heart, she felt a sense of crisis. It was too difficult to fight against a man like the ghost-masked female burial emperor. Such a mysterious and domineering empress was most likely the most attractive to young men. Everyone present had probably misunderstood. They thought that the reason why the ghost-masked female burial emperor made a move was because she had a different attitude towards Jun Xiaoyaro. Only Jun Xiaoyaro himself, after seeing the ghost mask on the female burial emperor's face, understood a little. It's this ghost mask again. It's the third time. Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. The first time, it was on the 49th floor of the Holy Spirit College's Heavenly Dao Tower. The ghost-masked girl had appeared and kept calling him Big Brother. The second time, it was on the lower realm's heroic spirit altar, where the ghost-masked woman's figure appeared, protecting Jun Xiaoyaro and opening the way. And now, it was the third time. Different from the previous two times, what appeared this time was not an illusory imprint, but a real woman. What exactly was this ghost mask? Was the woman who appeared 3 times the same person? What did it have to do with Jun Xiaoyaro? Jun Xiaoyaro fell into deep thought. Chapter 350. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro was deep in thought, the ghost-masked burial emperor did not stop. It was as if killing was the only way to intimidate everything. Of course, the ghost-masked burial emperor did not attack indiscriminately. Only those who had obstructed Jun Xiaoyaro before were killed by the ghost-masked burial emperor. Her attack sent chills down everyone's spines. In the end, the ghost-masked burial emperor's gaze locked onto the group of experts from the Nether King Palace. They were the ones who were most against Jun Xiaoyaro entering the burial ground. There was no other reason. If Jun Xiaoyaro entered the burial ground, it would bring trouble to Chu Tianba. Before the tyrant body recovered, Chu Tianba would not stand a chance against Jun Xiaoyaro. Ghost-masked burial emperor, don't go overboard. This is the burial ground and you want to protect a genius from the outside world. Aren't you afraid of offending the world? Although the experts from the Nether King Palace were wary, they were not afraid. The Nether King Palace was a first-rate force and they had experts like the Tianming burial emperor. Although the ghost-masked burial emperor was strong, she could not sweep through the burial ground 10 regions. The ghost-masked burial emperor did not say a word. She struck out with her hand again and it was as if the void was about to explode. The expressions of the experts from the Nether King Palace changed. Right at this moment, a cold snort resounded in the void. Ghost-masked burial emperor, are you crazy? Following this cold snort, the entire sky seemed to have fallen into darkness. A figure shrouded in a ferocious-looking pitch-black armor broke through the void and arrived. The aura of a supreme being shook the universe. Palace Master. Looking at the figure that appeared, the experts from the Nether King Palace were overjoyed. The person who appeared was the Palace Master of the Nether King Palace, the Tianming burial emperor. As one of the top experts in the eternal burial ground, although the Tianming burial emperor was ranked second, his strength was not much weaker than the ghost-masked burial emperor. Seeing that the Tianming burial emperor had appeared, the crowd was in an uproar. The top experts of the 10 regions of burial earth had all appeared. Could it be that the world was going to change today? You've also appeared, but so what? Seeing the heaven underworld burial emperor appear, the ghost-masked female burial emperor's tone did not change. What kind of karma do you have with this kid? Why are you helping him? Could it be that you want to please the clan behind him? Tianming Zhenhuang squinted his eyes. It had to be said that his words were very vicious and cunning. He immediately placed the ghost-masked female burial emperor on the opposite side of the ancient burial earth. Jun Xiaoyaro frowned slightly. This Tianming burial emperor made him a little unhappy. It has nothing to do with you. The ghost-masked female burial emperor's words were cold. Although that was not what she meant, she was too lazy to explain. Heh, don't you want this kid to enter the burial world? That's fine. So what if you let him in? Tianming burial emperor said indifferently. If he did not allow Jun Xiaoyaro to enter, the ghost-masked female burial emperor would not let the matter rest. Such a great Buddha, even if it was the sky underworld burial sovereign, he would still have to be extremely careful when dealing with him. Unless there was no other choice, Heaven Underworld Burial Emperor did not want to attack the ghost-masked female burial emperor. And even if Jun Xiaoyaro entered the burial realm, it didn't mean that he could stop Chu Tianba from obtaining the opportunity. At the end of the day, it still depended on one's own ability. If you dare to enter, I dare to kill you. Chu Tianba's eyes shot out a cold light that seemed to be able to cut through the void. He wanted to kill Jun Xiaoyaro personally and prove to the world that only the overlord body could be called a king. I'll return those words to you. Jun Xiaoyaro was too lazy to talk back. When the time came, the facts would prove everything. Next, the quota to enter the burial world was also determined. Other than Jun Xiaoyao, Lang Huan, Chu Tianba, Long Xiong, Mo Ling, Nine Nether Ao, Bloodfiend Tribe's prodigy, Corpse Refining Sect's prodigy, and others were also qualified to enter. Other than that, the rest of the living beings could only watch from the outside. Thank you. Before entering the burial world, Jun Xiaoyao glanced at the ghost-masked female burial emperor and said softly. Although he did not know the cause and effect of it now, he would figure it out in the future. After the burial world ends, I will look for you. The ghost-masked female burial emperor looked at Jun Xiaoyao and said. That face made her heart, which had been lonely for a long time, move slightly. It had nothing to do with the feelings between a man and a woman. It was a very special feeling. However, to an outsider, this conversation was practically a hammer strike. The ghost-masked female burial emperor has taken a liking to this pretty boy. Many male living beings' hearts were broken. Although they would never be able to obtain the ghost-masked female burial emperor's favor, as long as the ghost-masked female burial emperor did not like others, it was fine. It was like a girl chasing after a celebrity. Although it was impossible for her to have any relationship with her idol, as long as her idol fell in love, her heart would immediately break. Jun Xiaoyao nodded slightly. He believed that the ghost-masked female burial emperor did not have any ill intentions towards him. After that, Jun Xiaoyao and the others directly stepped into the spatial crack. The surrounding heaven and earth spun, the space was distorted and chaotic, and countless strange and motley illusions appeared. After a while, Jun Xiaoyao had already arrived at a place of dead silence. The heaven and earth were blood-red, and there were a total of 7 blood-red suns hanging high in the sky. Not only did they not bring any warmth to this area, but they also added a bloody and murderous aura. A thick aura of death permeated the air. Even the living beings of the burial earth would probably feel a little uncomfortable. Jun Xiaoyao relied on his powerful saint body to withstand it. There were no other living beings around him. Clearly, when they entered just now, the space was chaotic, and they did not land in the same place. We've finally arrived at the burial realm. Jun Xiaoyao let out a light breath. Before entering, Lang Huan had told him that they could barely explore the periphery of the burial realm. Perhaps they would obtain all kinds of opportunities. But they must not go deep. In the depths of the burial realm, even experts above the saint realm might bleed if they were not careful, let alone young geniuses like them. Jun Xiaoyao didn't care. He came here to find the 9 Wonders Reincarnation Immortal Grass. The system hasn't prompted me to sign in yet. Is it because I'm still at the edge of the burial realm? Jun Xiaoyao pondered. Perhaps the system would only prompt him to sign in after he went deep into the burial realm. Jun Xiaoyao continued forward. Along the way, he saw a skeleton half buried in the sand. The skeleton of a quasi-sage? Jun Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows. For some ordinary geniuses, this kind of skeleton was already a great opportunity. If they could comprehend the runes in the skeleton, they might gain a lot. But Jun Xiaoyao wasn't interested, so he didn't stop. In the next few hours, Jun Xiaoyao occasionally found some treasures and opportunities, such as rare metals buried underground, netherworld grass that grew in the burial realm, and so on. Almost every few steps, he would find some treasures. No wonder the living beings of the burial realm all wanted to enter the burial realm. Indeed, they could find treasures anywhere. Unfortunately, Jun Xiaoyao didn't care about these treasures. Along the way, Jun Xiaoyao also encountered skeletal creatures. Previously, when he had just entered the burial earth and passed by the land of buried bones, he had also encountered such skeletal creatures. Fortunately, the skeletal creatures in the periphery of the burial realm weren't very strong, so Jun Xiaoyao easily dealt with them. When Jun Xiaoyao came across another skeletal creature, he was surprised. He was surprised to find that this skeletal creature was covered in thunder patterns and could control a trace of the power of thunder. This is strange. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were deep. Chapter 351. As everyone knew, the eternal burial ground was a cold and ominous place. Most of the creatures in the burial ground were reincarnated from the dead. They were naturally restrained by the power of lightning and fire. Therefore, in the eternal burial ground, Jun Xiaoyao had almost never encountered a creature that could control the power of lightning and fire. Even if there were, it would be some special power like lightning and fire. On the other hand, the power of lightning unleashed by the skeletal being before him was the power of lightning that was of the purest yang. This was a little surprising. The only possibility was that the power of lightning did not come from the skeletal creature itself. It came from somewhere else. What did this mean? It meant a great opportunity. Jun Xiaoyao casually hit the skeleton with his palm. 10 billion pounds of divine power burst out and shattered the skeleton. He picked up a piece of bone and looked at the lightning patterns on it. What a complicated pattern. It's almost close to some great mystiques. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. Great mystiques were very rare, such as the true dragon mystique, the divine phoenix mystique, the Chilean mystique, and so on. Even with Jun Xiaoyao's experience, he could not ignore such a great mystique. He would take it seriously. It's still up ahead. Jun Xiaoyao continued to go deeper. Along the way, more and more skeletons were tainted with the power of lightning. This also meant that Jun Xiaoyao's direction was not wrong. In a part of the burial ground, there was a silver mountain range. The entire mountain was silver, as if it had been baptized and tempered by endless power of lightning. In the center of the mountain, there was a cave entrance. Endless lightning surged out of it. Outside the mountain, all kinds of skeletons that could control the power of lightning were fighting. And the ones fighting with them were the prodigies of the 10 minor kings. Apart from Chu Tianba, the other prodigies of the 10 minor kings were gathered here, including Lang Huan. After entering the burial ground, they each obtained some opportunities. Then, they also encountered some skeletons that could use the power of lightning. In the end, they gathered here. In that cave, there is very likely a lightning treasure or a great lightning mystique. Long Xiong's eyes were burning. Although it seemed a little inappropriate for burial earth beings to cultivate lightning god arts, it was still a little unsuitable. However, as the prodigies of the 10 minor kings, which one of them wasn't a prodigy? Cultivating the lightning god art wasn't too difficult for them. Plus, the lightning god art was extremely powerful and could be used as a trump card. It's just that these skeletons are too troublesome, Mo Ling said. As he spoke, he would occasionally glance at Lang Xian's delicate body from the corner of his eyes with a fiery gaze. If you keep looking, this princess will dig your eyeballs out. Lang Xian's beautiful face was filled with anger. Even though she was gentle and sweet to Jun Xiaoyao, she was still a woman. However, he didn't treat the others well. Especially a shameless snake like Mo Ling. Just looking at her made her feel uncomfortable and gave her goosebumps. If one were to say that Jun Xiaoyao's face was pleasing to the eye, then Jun Xiaoyao's face was a sight to behold. As for Mo Ling, it would be extremely tragic. It's impossible for that kid to walk out of the burial ground alive anyway. Mo Ling's snake eyes narrowed slightly. Suddenly, a voice came from afar. Oh, is that so? Hearing this voice, Mo Ling's body tensed up. Long Xiong, Ju Yuao, and the other prodigies also turned their gazes. In the distance, Jun Xiaoyao's white robe was whiter than snow. He walked in the air with his hands behind his back. His gaze was indifferent as he scanned the area. Then, his gaze landed on the cave. Is that where the opportunity is? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes showed a hint of interest. Young Master Jun, Lang Xian's face was filled with joy. She twisted her waist and flew up in a flash, landing beside Jun Xiaoyao. Mo Ling and the others' faces were extremely ugly. The opportunity here was probably the biggest opportunity in the outer area of the burial ground. If they continued to go deeper, their lives would be in danger. Now that Jun Xiaoyao had appeared, there was no doubt that he wanted to eat this fat piece of meat alone. He wouldn't even leave a piece of meat for them. Why are you still standing here? Aren't you going to scram? Jun Xiaoyao said indifferently. Simple and direct. He didn't beat around the bush. Jun Xiaoyao, we found this place first. It doesn't belong to you alone, Long Xiong said in a low voice. So what? If you don't scram, then die. Jun Xiaoyao didn't say anything and directly attacked. A palm print blasted out. It was as if a corner of the sky had collapsed as it suppressed Long Xiong. Zhun Xiaoyao, you. Long Xiong didn't expect Zhun Xiaoyao to be so decisive. He attacked without saying a word. He used a secret technique and his body expanded. The bone wings on his back flapped and a white bone armor spread out from his body. It was extremely tough. At the same time, the nether death dragon Qi rolled in front of him and turned into a bone shield. There was a loud bang. 10 billion pounds of divine power poured into the bone shield and instantly shattered it. At the same time, Long Xiong's entire body slammed hard onto the ground. Everyone, attack together, Mo Ling shouted. This time, the 10 minor kings didn't hesitate and quickly attacked. The Sky Prides of the Blood Fiend tribe and the Corpse Refining sect attacked immediately. They each used their own techniques. The Sky Prides of the Blood Fiend tribe took out the Blood Sea again and released endless death chi. The Sky Prides of the Corpse Refining sect took out a coffin. The coffin exploded in the void. A red-haired ancient corpse appeared. The red-haired demonic corpse was given to him by the mighty ones of the Corpse Refining sect, specifically to deal with Zhun Xiaoyao in the burial world. The red-haired demonic corpse's strength was almost on par with a true god expert. The 9 Serenities AO's eyes also shone with a cunning light. It was also looking for an opportunity. Just as the Sky Prides of the 10 minor kings attacked Zhun Xiaoyao. In the sky outside the spatial crack, the scene of the battle in the burial ground appeared in the void. They saw the Sky Prides of the 10 minor kings attacking Zhun Xiaoyao again. The living beings in the burial ground were extremely nervous. They were afraid that the same thing would happen again. No, even the 9 Serenities AO will attack this time. It's an existence that can compete with Chu Tianba. Yeah, and that red-haired demonic corpse. Its cultivation is almost on par with a true god. Who can stop it? There was a lot of discussion. The ghost-masked burial ground emperor stood alone in the void and watched the scene without saying a word. The battle in the burial ground began. The red-haired demonic corpse rushed forward. It was extremely ferocious and fierce. Its demonic chi filled the sky. Zhun Xiaoyao punched the red-haired demonic corpse. Its entire chest caved in, but it didn't disintegrate. Do you think something like last time will happen again? The Sky Prides of the Corpse Refining sect said coldly. His face was extremely pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. The red-haired demonic corpse was beyond his control. Even if he forced it now, it would be very harmful to him. The Sky Prides of the Blood Fiend tribe and Mo Ling took the opportunity to attack Zhun Xiaoyao while he was busy with the red-haired demonic corpse. Lang Huan didn't attack, but it wasn't that she was watching. She didn't think there was a need for her to do anything. If she helped, it would show that she didn't trust Zhun Xiaoyao. When ants work together, they are still ants. Stomping one to death is no different from stomping a group of them to death. Zhun Xiaoyao's blood chi surged like an ancient volcano erupting. His hair danced in the wind, and his entire body surged with immortal light. The power of the 160 Zenith Heaven immortal bones was finally displayed. At the same time, the supreme bone in his chest was faintly shining with divine light. A terrifying energy was gathering. Zhun Xiaoyao was about to kill. Chapter 352. A purple divine light flashed past Zhun Xiaoyao's right fist. He was already wearing the Saint King Annihilation Overlord gloves. Coupled with the divine power of 5 billion Katis and the power of the Zenith Heaven Immortal Bone, Zhun Xiaoyao's punch seemed to be able to tear apart the void. He punched towards the red-haired fiend corpse. Bang! With a deafening explosion, the chest of the red-haired fiend corpse was penetrated by Zhun Xiaoyao's punch. Of course, the red-haired fiend corpse was a half-puppet. As long as it was not destroyed, it could still move. The red-haired fiend corpse's nails were like sharp thorns as it scratched towards Zhun Xiaoyao's head. Zhun Xiaoyao shook one of his arms and unleashed his divine power, which surged like an ocean. Kaila. The entire red-haired fiend corpse was split into two. The Corpse Refinement sect Paragon was completely stunned. He was dumbfounded as though he had lost his soul. The combat strength of the red-haired fiend corpse was close to that of a true god. Although it could not be compared to a true god expert, Its physique was indeed close to that of a true god. But now, it was still killed by Jun Xiaoyaro with a single punch. However, at the same time that Jun Xiaoyaro destroyed the red-haired fiend corpse, the attacks of Long Xiong, Mo Ling, and the blood-malevolent race paragon had already landed. Jun Xiaoyao's expression did not change as a strange aura flowed out. Those extremely powerful moves dissipated into the void. Dharmic power immunity, activate. Jun Xiaoyao's gaze was cold as he targeted the corpse refinement sect paragon first. The corpse refinement sect paragon had no fighting spirit in his heart and turned to leave without any intention of resisting. Most of the combat strength of the corpse refinement sect paragon was in the fiend corpse. He was ordinary and did not have anything special. Jun Xiaoyaro grabbed the void and his dharmic powers surged, forming the heavenly god spear. The spear pierced through the corpse refining sect's prodigy. Then, the god of heaven's spear exploded. The corpse refinement sect paragon was instantly smashed into pieces and couldn't be more dead. Outside the burial world, the expressions of the corpse refinement sect experts were extremely dark. However, the shock was not over yet. Jun Xiaoyaro turned around and locked onto Mo Ling. Mo Ling's entire body turned cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Jun Xiaoyao's chest glowed, and a blazing light beam shot out. It was the light of tribulation. This was like a punishment from the heavens. Wherever the light passed, everything was annihilated. Heavenly Python swallowing sun technique. Mo Ling let out a wild roar. His entire body was splattered with blood. It was as though he had sacrificed himself to display a terrifying divine ability. It was rumored that the ancestors of the sky-devouring demonic pythons could even swallow and refine the sun in the sky. This superpower was derived from this legend. It was the trump card of the sky-devouring demonic python clan. Once the move was performed, it was as if a huge phantom of a fiendish python had appeared in the void. The python's body was like a mountain ridge that stretched for thousands of miles. The fiendish python opened its mouth and swallowed the light of tribulation. However, before Mo Ling could reveal a smile of success, he was shocked to find that the fiendish python's illusory figure began to tremble like a wave, becoming unstable. Break. As Jun Xiaoyaro finished speaking, the entire fiendish python's illusory figure collapsed. Once again, black and white light shot out from Jun Xiaoyao's chest. It was the light of reincarnation. No. Mo Ling's eyes popped out as he screamed in horror. In the next moment, the light of reincarnation swept across his body. Mo Ling's body was like a weathered rock, crumbling into dust. Another 10 minor king's supreme talent had fallen. Damn it. When Long Xiong and the Blood Fiend tribe supreme talent saw this, their eyes were filled with extreme solemnity and fear. They even vaguely revealed a look of fear. That's right. This group of high and mighty 10 minor kings, who considered everyone else beneath them, finally felt fear. For supreme talents of their level, they should not have developed such feelings of fear. However, they were really afraid now. Jun Xiaoyaro was a devil. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand. The Tu-Shi ancient emperor flame surged out and surrounded the Blood Fiend tribe supreme talent. At the same time, he retracted the Man-Ruler seal and suppressed Long Xiong. At this juncture, the 9 Serenities AO finally made its move. If it did not make its move, it would be the only one left to face Jun Xiaoyao. The moment the 9 Serenities AO made its move, the energy waves were extremely terrifying. On the 9 tails behind it, there were 9 ferocious beast heads. At this moment, the 9 heads opened their mouths at the same time. 9 rays of purple light shot out, as if they could split heaven and earth. Such power. Lang Huan was slightly shocked when he saw this. However, he was also very confident in Jun Xiaoyaro. Although the 9 Serenities AO had launched a sneak attack, Jun Xiaoyaro had sensed it. Suddenly, dharmic powers surged behind him and a platinum cloak appeared. Many images of gods appeared on the surface of the cloak, as if the gods were chanting and releasing endless holy light. This was the supreme defensive technique of the divine elephant overpowering divine elephant, the cloak of God. This technique was evolved from the underworld protection. Its defensive power was even stronger, as if there was a god protecting Jun Xiaoyaro. The 9 rays of light released by the 9 Serenities AO landed on the cloak of gods, but they could not penetrate it at all. At the same time, the blood fiend prodigy let out a heart-wrenching scream and was burned to ashes by the burning emperor flame. Long Xiong spat out mouthfuls of blood from the impact. The dragon scales on his body were all shattered. He was in an extremely sorry state. Jun Xiaoyaro used his finger as a sword and slashed out with the immortal Slayer sword art. At the same time, a divine chain of order rushed out from his forehead and turned into a golden short sword. It was the primitive Emperor Dao sword. The power of 2 of the 5 great divine arts when used at the same time was imaginable. Even though Long Xiong had used up all his energy and suppressed his cultivation base, he was still a mantis trying to stop a chariot in front of such an attack. He was overestimating himself. 2 slashes. Long Xiong's chest and head were pierced by 2 rays of sword light. Long Xiong of the Corpse Dragon tribe had fallen. In the end, Jun Xiaoyaro turned around and looked at the 9 Serenities Ao indifferently. The 9 Serenities Ao's hair stood on end, and there was a look of fear in its eyes. It was extremely ferocious and could even compete with Chu Tianba among the 10 minor kings. But now, it was afraid. Die. Jun Xiaoyaro used the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. His fist light was shocking, and 6 reincarnation vortexes appeared, causing the void to explode and the sky to tremble. The 9 Serenities Ao resisted with all its might. Its body was glowing with purple light as it used all kinds of ferocious beasts. It even used the 9 Serenities Ao's unique 9 Serenities Ao divine art. The purple light was destructive. Unfortunately, if it was a pure-blooded 9 Serenities Ao, it might be able to fight Jun Xiaoyao. But this 9 Serenities Ao was only a mixed blood. In front of Jun Xiaoyao, it was still unable to resist Jun Xiaoyao's punch and was shattered. The entire land of opportunity fell silent. Other than Jun Xiaoyao, only Lang Huan and the group of skeletons at the entrance of the cave were left. Lang Huan was dumbfounded. Even though she knew that Jun Xiaoyao would win in the end, she did not expect it to be so clean and tidy. Jun Xiaoyao was too ferocious. Lang Huan was wet again. At this moment, outside the burial world, it was completely silent. The entire place seemed to have fallen into winter, and everyone was frozen into statues. Chapter 353. Time and space seemed to have frozen. All the creatures outside the burial ground were speechless. Although some of them had already expected it. But when they saw it with their own eyes, they were still shocked. The 10 minor kings of the eternal burial ground. Except for Chu Tianba and Lang Huan, the other 8 had all died at the hands of Jun Xiaoyao. And these few were easily killed by Jun Xiaoyao when they were besieged. Humiliating. All of the creatures of the burial earth felt humiliated in their hearts. Only some of the powerhouses of the Shura demon kingdom sighed. Their princess had good taste. Qin Xiana was also impressed. She had never liked any man, but Jun Xiaoyao was the only man she admired. Damn it, damn it. The powerhouses of the Corpse Dragon clan were furious, and the world was roaring. Not only the Corpse Dragon clan, but the powerhouses of the sky-devouring demonic Python clan, the Blood Fiend tribe, the Corpse Refining sect, and other forces were also furious. They couldn't wait to kill Jun Xiaoyao. Is the Grand Ancestor still indifferent? The powerhouses of the Corpse Dragon clan communicated with each other. The powerhouse of the Corpse Dragon clan, the Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor, was also a top powerhouse of the burial ground. He was as famous as the Tianming Burial Emperor. That genius of the Jun family, after all, has that layer of background. A powerhouse of the Corpse Dragon clan said with fear. No matter how strong the Jun family is, can they be stronger than the forces of the eternal burial ground combined? Not to mention, there is a great horror in the depths of the burial ground since ancient times, a creature said unwillingly. The Corpse Dragon clan wasn't the only one who was unwilling. The rest of the powerhouses of the sky-devouring demonic Python clan, the Blood Fiend tribe, and the Corpse Refining sect were also planning something. If Jun Xiaoyao had only killed the geniuses of 1 or 2 families, perhaps no one would dare to touch him because of the Jun family's background. But now, Jun Xiaoyao had almost killed all of the 10 minor kings. That meant that Jun Xiaoyao had offended more than 90% of the forces of the eternal burial ground. This wasn't something that could be easily brushed aside. Other than Lang Huan, only Chu Tianba was still alive. Disciple, you must complete that task. Tianming Zhenhuang's eyes were incomparably deep. He had Chu Tianba enter burial realm to search for the living being's reincarnation pool. Naturally, it wasn't just for Chu Tianba's transformation. There was another matter for him to do. If he succeeded, the burial realm would most likely undergo a great change. Outside burial realm, all of the creatures were sighing in admiration, clamoring and discussing. Only the ghost-masked female burial emperor was like a cold and aloof statue, standing still from start to finish. Zhun Xiaoyao's performance came as a bit of a surprise to her. As for the back of that white-robed figure, it slowly overlapped with the white-robed youth in her illusion. Within the burial realm, compared to the clamor of the outside world, Zhun Xiaoyao was calm and composed. He did not panic at all after killing so many 10 lesser kings' sky prides. It was like slaughtering a few chickens. Even Lang Huan was a little speechless as she spat out, "Young Master Zhun, can't you act a little more dignified?" "Why?" Zhun Xiaoyao asked back. Those who died were the treasures of the various immortal forces in the burial realm. Now that they're all dead, you've offended more than 90% of the forces in the burial realm. Lang Huan said. Even if the entire world is my enemy, I, the Son of God, won't frown, let alone the burial realm. Zhun Xiaoyao chuckled, not minding it at all. His ambition was to suppress the entire era, even the past and present. What could the eternal burial realm do to him? "Young Master Zhun, don't say any more. I'm going to get wet again." Lang Huan's beautiful legs trembled. Zhun Xiaoyao's unintentional domineering aura was enough to intoxicate any woman. Beauties loved heroes. This was an unchanging truth. Zhun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, was no longer something that could be described as a simple hero. He was an invincible, unparalleled legend throughout the ages. All right, let's get rid of these little troubles. Let's see what opportunities there are in the cave. Zhun Xiaoyao waved his hand and looked at the group of skeletons. Zhun Xiaoyao and Lang Huan both made their moves. With Zhun Xiaoyao's powers, he was able to wipe out the skeletons before long. However, just as they entered the cave, 2 sage-level skeletons appeared. Zhun Xiaoyao took out the god-slaying doll and finished the battle in a few moves. Then, the 2 entered the cave. At a glance, it was filled with boundless lightning energy. It was like a vast ocean. Zhun Xiaoyao was fine. After all, he wasn't a burial realm creature. The power of thunder didn't have much effect on him. On the other hand, Lang Huan was still restrained by the thunder even though some of the death qi had faded from her body. At this moment, her delicate face was pale and she felt uncomfortable. Zhun Xiaoyao didn't say anything. His spiritual power vibrated gently and protected Lang Huan. Lang Huan glanced at Zhun Xiaoyao and smiled sweetly. He was domineering to the outside but attentive to the inside. Although he didn't seem to care, he would still protect her when necessary. Who wouldn't love such a man? Lang Huan felt more and more that her judgment was right. Zhun Xiaoyao didn't care. He just did it in passing. At this moment, his attention was all on the thunder runes on the wall. In the entire cave, apart from some treasures, there were only thunder runes carved all over the walls. Each rune was like the orbit of the stars in the sky. It was extremely complicated and required a lot of energy. However, there were a total of 100,000 thunder runes in the cave. Ordinary geniuses would find it difficult to even memorize them, let alone understand them. What mysterious runes. They're too complicated. Lang Huan looked for a while and shook her head slightly. It was almost impossible for her to completely memorize these runes. If she wanted to comprehend them, she didn't know how many years it would take. Zhun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, had a flash in his eyes. His talent was unparalleled. Even the 18th ancestor sighed. When he was young, he was definitely not as good as Zhun Xiaoyao. Interesting. I didn't expect it to be the Thunder Emperor's mystique. Zhun Xiaoyao glanced at it and smiled. He was very satisfied with this reward. The Thunder Emperor's mystique? Lang Huan was surprised. She didn't expect Zhun Xiaoyao to understand it with a glance. I once read about the Thunder Emperor's deeds in the ancient records. He was a creature of the immortal domain. He was talented and had an unparalleled thunder body. His ambition was higher than the sky and he wanted to create his own mystique. In the end, he really created the Thunder Emperor's mystique. It's comparable to the true dragon's mystique, the divine phoenix's mystique, and the Chilean's mystique. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed. He didn't expect the inheritance of the Thunder Emperor's mystique to be in the burial realm. This kind of mystique was very rare. Even Jun Lingtsang only mastered the incomplete Chilean's mystique. The true dragon's mystique and the divine phoenix's mystique were Zulong. They were the mystiques of the 10,000 Phoenix spiritual mountain. They definitely wouldn't be leaked out easily. The Thunder Emperor's mystique was comparable to these mystiques. It was clear how powerful it was. Not bad. After mastering the Thunder Emperor's mystique, I have more tricks up my sleeves. I can also deal with the immortal ancient world in the future, Jun Xiaoyaro murmured. In the immortal ancient world, monsters from all walks of life would appear and the sleeping freaks would awaken. Although Jun Xiaoyaro had an invincible Dao heart, he wasn't just arrogant. With the Thunder Emperor's mystique, his strength would obviously soar again. However, when Lang Huan heard this, she asked in a daze, "Young Master Jun, don't tell me you're going to sit in this cave for a few years to comprehend." Chapter 354. Meditate for a few years. Jun Xiaoyaro laughed. Lang Huan was so naive that it was cute. Didn't she know that there were creatures in this world that were known as cheats? Unfortunately, Jun Xiaoyaro was one of the cheats. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't answer. Instead, he sat down and began meditating. "Young Master Jun, are you really going to stay here for a few years?" "I don't want that. Also, there isn't even a comfortable bed in this cave. It's not convenient to have sex." Jun Xiaoyaro ignored Lang Huan's teasing and began meditating. The lightning runes on the cave walls seemed to peel off and flashed before his eyes. It was difficult for ordinary people to remember a single rune. However, Jun Xiaoyaro had been using the chaotic divinity grindstone visualization method to temper his soul since he was young. His soul power was far superior to other prodigies of the same level. Not to mention, he had 3 lives of primordial spirits. The consumption of soul power was almost negligible. Seeing Jun Xiaoyaro immersed in meditation, Lang Huan pursed her lips. She didn't disturb him and sat down to meditate. Of course, wanting to comprehend a great divine ability was absolutely not such a simple matter. Even some monstrous prodigies couldn't fully comprehend it without a few years. Lang Huan didn't expect to fully comprehend it. She could only try her best to understand it. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro was meditating on the Lightning Emperor's grand technique, Chu Tianba continued to venture deeper into the burial realm. Chu Tianba didn't care about the opportunities along the way. The only thing he needed to do now was to find the pool of reincarnation. The pool of reincarnation is near the depths of the burial realm. It's difficult to reach it with my own strength. Chu Tianba's eyes flashed. He raised his hand and a pitch-black bell appeared, protecting his body as he plunged into the burial realm. The dangers along the way couldn't stop Chu Tianba. The pitch-black bell destroyed all obstacles in front of him. That looks like the soul-reaping bell of the Nether King Palace. Chu Tianba's image was projected to the outside world. When they saw the pitch-black bell, all of the burial earth creatures were astonished. They didn't expect His Majesty Nether King to hand this quasi-emperor weapon to Chu Tianba. Moreover, Chu Tianba didn't seem to be interested in the opportunities in the outer regions of burial realm. He went straight into the depths of burial realm. Could it be that Chu Tianba wants to find the legendary pool of samsara in the burial realm's myriad spirits graveyard? To think that the underworld King Hall would have such a plan. However, that place is extremely dangerous. Even with a quasi-emperor weapon protecting them, they might die if they aren't careful. Wealth comes from danger. However, I have heard that there seems to be a tomb keeper in the depths of the myriad spirit graveyard. It could be said that Chu Tianba's actions had completely exceeded everyone's expectations. Furthermore, it was clear that this wasn't Chu Tianba's doing alone. It was the King of Hell's palace that was plotting behind the scenes. Your goal, could it be The ghost-masked buried emperor looked at Tianming buried emperor with a deep gaze. He. Tianming burial emperor laughed but didn't say anything. Burial realm had been sealed for so long. It was time for it to see the light of day again. Just as Chu Tianba was entering the depths of burial realm. In the cave, Zhun Xiaoyaro was still comprehending. It had already been a day since he started comprehending the Tao. At a certain moment, Zhun Xiaoyaro opened his eyes. There was a flash of lightning in his eyes. He got up and sighed slightly. Lang Huan, who was beside him, also opened her beautiful eyes when she heard something. She didn't gain much either. The Lightning Emperor's great superpower was too complicated. It wasn't something that could be memorized in a day or two. Seeing Zhun Xiaoyao's expression, Lang Huan comforted him, "Young Master Zhun, don't be discouraged. It's almost impossible to memorize the Lightning Emperor's great superpower, let alone comprehend it. Indeed, I have underestimated the complexity of the Lightning Emperor's great superpower," Zhun Xiaoyaro said truthfully. "However, with young Master Zhun's talent, you might gain something if you stay for a month or two," Lang Huan said. Zhun Xiaoyaro slowly raised his hand. There was lightning between his 5 fingers. Then, it condensed into miniature stars. Beside Zhun Xiaoyaro, there were also stars formed by lightning, bobbing up and down. Lang Huan. Zhun Xiaoyao's fingers moved. The lightning stars between his fingers burst out. Lightning spread, exploding in the void. He flipped his palm again. The lightning gathered in his palm and turned into a blazing lightning, swallowing and spitting out terrifying lightning energy. "Young Master Zhun, you." Lang Huan was a little confused. This Lightning Emperor's great superpower is indeed complicated. It took me a day, but I still couldn't comprehend it completely. I only understood part of the moves. Zhun Xiaoyaro played with the lightning in his palm and said calmly. Hearing this, Lang Huan was speechless. She was doubting life. Could it be that I have comprehended a fake superpower? Lang Huan looked at the lightning runes on the wall again. She found that it was still as complicated as before. It seemed that there was nothing wrong with her eyes. It was Zhun Xiaoyaro who was too monstrous. In a day, not only did Zhun Xiaoyaro completely memorize the Lightning Emperor's great superpower, but he also comprehended part of the moves. This could no longer be described as monstrous. He was simply a monster. Zhun Xiaoyaro ignored the shocked Lang Huan. He had already memorized the Lightning Emperor's great superpower, and its power did not disappoint him. When Zhun Xiaoyaro completely comprehended it, the Lightning Emperor's great superpower would undoubtedly be another trump card. As for now, Zhun Xiaoyaro could not waste time on comprehending the superpower. His main purpose in coming to the burial ground was not completed yet. I didn't see any traces of the 9 Wonders reincarnation immortal grass in the periphery of the burial ground. It seems that it is in the depths of the burial ground, Zhun Xiaoyaro said. Young Master Zhun, you can't enter the depths of the burial ground casually. Even if you are a saint or above, there is a risk of dying if you are not careful. Lang Huan's expression changed. She did not expect Zhun Xiaoyaro to want to go deeper into the burial ground. That was no different from courting death. I have the strength to protect myself. No need to worry. You stay here and continue comprehending then, Zhun Xiaoyaro said. Seeing Zhun Xiaoyao's attitude being so resolute, Lang Huan did not persuade anymore either. She just urged Zhun Xiaoyaro to be careful. Zhun Xiaoyaro nodded and immediately left. The further one went into the depths of the burial ground, the more dangerous it was indeed. For example, a random mud pit on the ground might hide a crisis that was sufficient to make a saint perish. Although Zhun Xiaoyaro was monstrous, it was also not possible to be strong enough to be able to go deep into the burial ground alone. He took out a simple and unadorned armor, covered in crack patterns, giving off an ancient aura of vicissitudes of life. This ancient armor was bestowed to Zhun Xiaoyaro by Jiang Daoshu to protect himself. It sought advantages and avoided disadvantages, and nothing was taboo. All kinds of incomplete killing formations, curses left behind, were all isolated by this ancient armor, unable to bring the slightest bit of harm to Zhun Xiaoyaro. Zhun Xiaoyaro also went deep into the burial ground at an extremely fast speed. And the deeper he went, the more Jun Xiaoyaro had an inexplicable feeling. It was a vague sense of familiarity. Finally, a large ancient tomb appeared in front of Jun Xiaoyao's vision. All kinds of corpses and tombstones were scattered everywhere, as if it was the final resting place of all living beings. He had finally arrived at the All Spirits graveyard. And it was also at this moment that the system's notification finally sounded in Jun Xiaoyao's mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. You have arrived at the sign-in location. Do you wish to sign in? Sign in. Chapter 355. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the 7-star reward, 7 seals. As the system's voice fell, a mysterious flow of information poured into Jun Xiaoyao's mind. 7-star reward. Jun Xiaoyaro was also slightly shocked. A 7-star reward was already considered very high. So far, the highest reward he had received was only an 8-star reward. As for 9-star and 10-star rewards, Jun Xiaoyaro hadn't signed in yet. He was also looking forward to what the 9-star and 10-star rewards would be in the future. However, a 7-star reward was already considered very high. Then, Jun Xiaoyaro began to check his sign-in reward. After digesting it, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed with light. The 7 seals of the immortal forbidding seal was a rare sealing technique. The 7 seals not only had a powerful sealing ability, but it could also combine the power of heaven and earth to set up array patterns, erupting 10 or 100 times the power. This kind of terrifying sealing technique was as rare as the mana immunity from before. The 7 seals have a total of 7 seals. If all 7 seals are used at the same time, it is said that even immortals can be sealed. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed. The 7 seals were indeed worthy of being a 7-star reward. Because it was a reward from signing in, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't need to comprehend it and could directly use it. However, with his current realm and ability, it was impossible for him to directly use the complete 7 seals. However, even if it was only 1 or 2 seals, it was still considered a powerful technique. After all, the 7 seals didn't only have the ability to seal, but also a powerful offensive and suppressive power. First, there was the Thunder Emperor's great mystical power, then there was the 7 seals. This trip was not in vain. Jun Xiaoyaro was satisfied. The increase in his trump cards would also be very helpful for the future struggle for hegemony in the immortal ancient world. Right now, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't carefully explore the 7 seals. Instead, he swept his gaze towards the myriad spirits graveyard. Before entering, Jun Xiaoyaro had also learned some information about the burial realm. He knew that there was a myriad spirits graveyard in the depths of the burial realm. Among them, there was a pool of reincarnation. Jun Xiaoyaro speculated that the 9 Wonders reincarnation immortal grass might grow near the reincarnation pool. As far as the eye could see, the entire All Spirits graveyard was vast and boundless, with no end in sight. All kinds of skeletons and tombstones were scattered all over the place. Jun Xiaoyaro could also sense a faint sealing power. This All Spirits graveyard seemed to be sealed just like the entire burial realm. Jun Xiaoyaro stepped into the All Spirits graveyard. All kinds of incomplete killing formations and ancient curses were activated. Moreover, even a puddle of mud could kill a Saint King expert. Jun Xiaoyaro used the ancient armor given to him by Jiang Daoshu to protect himself. Although the ancient armor was simple and unadorned and full of cracks, the aura it exuded helped Jun Xiaoyaro block off all killing intent. Jun Xiaoyaro was able to stroll leisurely and calmly. And just as Jun Xiaoyaro entered the All Spirits graveyard, in the depths of the 10,000 Spirits graveyard, in an ancient cave, there was a clay statue-like figure that seemed to have been sitting cross-legged for an eternity. This aura is, an incomparably hoarse and deep voice came from the clay statue-like figure. At the same time, outside the burial realm, looking at the figure walking leisurely and calmly in the All Spirits graveyard, all the creatures in the burial realm were speechless. As expected of a genius with a strong background. Just that ancient armor alone is enough to make many people in the burial realm unable to do anything to him. Then why didn't the Jun family's genius use it when he fought against the 10 young kings? Isn't that obvious? Do you need to use a knife to kill an ant? That's true. No wonder the Jun family's genius always looks so calm. It's because he's not afraid of anyone at all. Seeing Zhang Xiaoyao's image projected in the sky, all the creatures present were discussing. Many of the creatures in the burial realm felt helpless. In terms of talent and cultivation, they were no match for Zhang Xiaoyao. In terms of background and power, they were no match for Zhang Xiaoyao. It was no wonder that Zhang Xiaoyao was so arrogant and condescending in the eyes of these creatures in the burial realm. Thinking about it from another perspective, standing in the same position, they would only be more arrogant and condescending. Just as the creatures were discussing intensely, a creature in the burial realm suddenly pointed at the image and shouted, "They've met. The Zhang family's genius and Chu Tianba have met." Following the exclamation, everyone's eyes were firmly fixed on the light screen in the sky. Inside the All-Spirits graveyard, there was an incomparably vast lake. The water in the entire lake appeared to be chaotic, as if it had cut off the galaxy in the sky and merged into it. And in this lake, all kinds of illusions were produced. All living beings reincarnated, all living things changed, the sun and the moon changed, the 4 seasons withered and flourished. It was as if the lake had manifested the appearance of all living beings. It was the reincarnation pool of living beings. And in the reincarnation pool of living beings, a figure was sitting cross-legged. It was Chu Tianba. Around his body, endless energy surged into it. The cracks on Chu Tianba's body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It wouldn't take long for his body to be repaired. When my body is completely repaired, the first thing I'll do is find the Zhang family's sacred body, Chu Tianba whispered coldly. Oh, is that so? Then there's no need. I'm already here. A faint voice sounded, and Zhang Xiaoyao appeared. You. Chu Tianba's eyes flashed with a dark light. Zhang Xiaoyao had his hands behind his back. His expression was relaxed, as if he was strolling in his own backyard, not at all like he was in a dangerous place like the 10,000 spirits graveyard. You want to rely on the reincarnation pool of living beings to restore your body. That's a good idea. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes were as calm as water. What? You want to stop me? Chu Tianba said coldly. What do you think? Zhang Xiaoyao smiled faintly, not caring at all. Ha! If you make a move, then I'm afraid this thing will be gone. Chu Tianba sneered and took out a stalk of grass that emitted a 7-colored brilliance. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes narrowed slightly. It's the 9 Wonders reincarnation immortal grass. It seems like you know why I came to the burial world. Zhang Xiaoyao's expression returned to normal. Ha, if the Nether King Palace wants to find out, then naturally I can find out. Chu Tianba said. If you want to use this to threaten me, then you're gravely mistaken. If you destroy this stalk of grass, then this Son of God will bury the entire Nether King Palace with you. Zhang Xiaoyao said indifferently. But the murderous intent stirred the heavens and earth. Don't worry. I, Chu Tianba, only want to compete with you once in my perfect state. Once my tyrant body recovers, you can naturally obtain the 9 Wonders reincarnation immortal grass if you defeat me. Chu Tianba said. The tyrant body of the heavens had its own dignity. Chu Tianba didn't want to use the 9 Wonders reincarnation immortal grass to force Zhang Xiaoyao to admit defeat. Instead, he wanted to wait until his dominating body had transformed before killing Zhang Xiaoyao in a fair and square manner. Otherwise, a victory obtained through despicable means would be an insult to the tyrant body of the heavens. Believe me, when the time comes, you will only feel more despair. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes had a trace of faint pity. In front of a peerless genius like Zhang Xiaoyao, any struggles and transformations would be futile. It would only cause Chu Tianba to sink deeper into despair. Unfortunately, Chu Tianba didn't seem to realize it. Chapter 356. It seems that you are too confident in yourself. In the past, the tyrant body has defeated the saint body many times. Hearing Zhang Xiaoyao's words, Chu Tianba snorted. If he was an incomplete tyrant body, he might have a chance against Zhang Xiaoyao. But if Chu Tianba's physique was completely transformed, then he was confident that he could suppress Zhang Xiaoyao. This was the innate arrogance and confidence of the tyrant body. Zhang Xiaoyao shook his head and didn't say anything. An ant thought that after transforming, he would become a true dragon. But in the eyes of the stronger ones, he was just an ant that had turned into an earthworm. What was the difference? Since you are so confident, then this son of God will give you this opportunity. Zhang Xiaoyaro wasn't in a hurry. He suddenly wanted to see Chu Tianba's expression of despair when he realized that he was still a weakling after transforming. Well, Zhang Xiaoyaro was definitely not some kind of devil. He was just kind enough to fulfill the wish of a person who was about to die. Chimpage. They all say that the tyrant body is arrogant, but in the end, there is an even more arrogant saint body. Chu Tianba coldly looked at Zhang Xiaoyaro. He didn't say anything else and began to transform through the pool of reincarnation. Zhang Xiaoyaro just stood there calmly. He had nothing to do, so he also looked at the pool of reincarnation. After dealing with Chu Tianba and obtaining the 9 Wonders Reincarnation Immortal Grass, there is no need to rush to leave. I will use this pool to transform first. Zhang Xiaoyaro could sense that the pool of reincarnation was extraordinary. It contained a dense mystic power of all living beings, as if all the essence of the living beings in the All-Spirits graveyard had gathered in this pool of water. What kind of existence is the burial realm? Who established it? What is their purpose? Zhang Xiaoyaro couldn't help but think. He also understood that this graveyard wasn't the deepest place in the burial realm. In the deepest part, there was a terrifying existence. The All-Spirits graveyard was located in the center of the entire burial realm. At most, it was located in the depths of the center. In fact, Zhang Xiaoyaro could faintly sense that there were many terrifying auras hidden in the depths of burial world. That was probably where the greatest foundation of the entire eternal burial ground lay. As for those buried emperors of the 10 regions of burial earth, they were merely experts on the surface. Zhang Xiaoyaro shook his head slightly and didn't think too much about it. When I have the strength, not only the 9 heavens 10 earths, but also the eternal burial ground, the forbidden zone, and even the legendary alien realm, I will personally go there. Zhang Xiaoyaro set a goal in his heart. While Zhang Xiaoyaro was waiting, outside the burial realm, there was an uproar. Voices of discussion rose in all directions. In the beginning, he saw Zhang Xiaoyaro and Chu Tianba meet. Everyone thought that Zhang Xiaoyaro would make a move to stop Chu Tianba from recovering his tyrant body. However, the turn of events after that was out of everyone's expectations. The Zhang family's son of God didn't make a move. Oh my, this doesn't fit his style. Didn't you see that Chu Tianba took out a stalk of grass? It looks like the 9 Wonder Reincarnation Immortal Grass. It only grows beside the living reincarnation pool. He must be using it as a threat. Sigh, this is the will of the heavens. It wants Chu Tianba to redeem our burial ground's reputation. That's right. If Chu Tianba's heavenly tyrant body hasn't recovered, it'll be difficult for him to go up against the Zhang family's son of God. Seeing this scene, many of the burial ground creatures breathed a sigh of relief. Other than Lang Huan, only Chu Tianba was left among the 10 minor kings of burial ground. If Chu Tianba were to be defeated by Zhang Xiaoyaro as well, it would be a huge blow to the spirits of the burial grounds. The expressions of the powerhouses of the King of Hell's palace also relaxed. What they were most worried about was that Zhang Xiaoyaro would stop Chu Tianba from completing his tyrant body transformation. Now, it seemed that the dust had settled. Tianming Burial Emperor looked at the void and seemed to have sensed something. He smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry. My disciple will avenge your clan's prodigy." As soon as these words were spoken, all of the burial earth beings were shocked. Could it be that the ancestors of the Corpse Dragon clan and the sky-devouring demonic Python clan had arrived? Thinking of this, the creatures felt their scalps go numb. If it weren't for the ghost-masked burial emperor supporting Zhang Xiaoyaro, he would be in danger. Inside the burial ground, beside the living reincarnation pool, Chu Tianba's body was enveloped by a mysterious force. It was the purest energy of all living beings. It seemed to be cleansing Chu Tianba's body, causing the cracks on his body to begin to heal. At the same time, Chu Tianba's aura was also rising steadily as his body healed. Finally, when the last crack on Chu Tianba's body was healed, his cultivation had broken through the complete divine fire realm and reached the empty god realm. Among the younger generation, Chu Tianba's cultivation was enough to sweep through all. Rumble. The sound of bones cracking came from Chu Tianba's body. It was as if huge stars were colliding with each other. His bronze-colored muscles had become flawless. Many mysterious divine runes flowed on the surface of his skin. These were the divine runes that belonged to the overlord body. They contained the supreme power of inheritance. At this moment, Chu Tianba's aura was so strong that it was enough to make the younger generation lose their will to fight. Even Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyelids slightly. He was finally interested. Success. I finally succeeded. Although I can't reach the level of perfection before, it's enough. Feeling the perfect transformation of his body, Chu Tianba's eyes shone brightly. This feeling of power returning, of being perfect and flawless, was simply too wonderful. And this feeling made Chu Tianba's confidence soar. So what if Jun Xiaoyaro had defeated all the young kings before? The current Chu Tianba could do it easily. Interesting. Since I entered the burial ground, there's finally an opponent that can make me interested. Jun Xiaoyao's handsome face was as calm as water. Even if Chu Tianba's physical body had recovered, even if his cultivation had reached the void god realm, Jun Xiaoyao's expression was still as impassive as ever. Still pretending to be calm? I'm impressed. Chu Tianba sneered. He took out the 9 Wonders Reincarnation Immortal Grass and threw it beside the reincarnation pool. If you beat me, you'll naturally get the 9 Wonders Reincarnation Immortal Grass. But now, it seems like you won't have that chance. Chu Tianba's eyes were filled with contempt. You should say that to yourself. Jun Xiaoyaro also released his own aura. Although it was the aura of the complete divine fire realm. However, his aura was no weaker than Chu Tianba, who was at the empty god realm. Jun Xiaoyaro had the divine elephant overpowering force, the sacred body of the ancients, and the immortal bone of the great all-embracing heaven. The 3 forces were activated at the same time. It was like a sleeping true dragon had awakened. A monstrous aura surged. Jun Xiaoyaro was about to get serious. Sensing this aura, even someone as strong as Chu Tianba couldn't help but reveal a trace of surprise. Jun Xiaoyao's aura made him feel a trace of danger. Impossible. The complete divine fire realm is only a line away from the void god realm, but the difference is like heaven and earth. Moreover, although he has the sacred body of the ancients, I also have the tyrant body of the heavens. I'm not weaker than him in the same realm, let alone one realm higher. Chu Tianba thought to himself. Jun family sacred body, come and fight. Chu Tianba attacked. He wanted to prove that the tyrant body was the strongest body in history. Chapter 357. Chu Tianba's aura was different from the other 10 minor kings. The ripples of his attack were much stronger than Long Xiong, Mo Ling, and even the 9 Serenities AO. His fist smashed out like an expanse of stars smashing down, and it erupted with a boundless wave of energy. Although the living beings outside Burial Realm couldn't personally experience these fluctuations of power, they could still see them. Chu Tianba's strength was much stronger after his transformation. He's so strong. Even through the light screen, I feel like I'm suffocating. Yeah, the son of God of the Jun family has finally met his match. The burial ground finally has a genius who can compete with him. Countless voices were heard from all directions. Obviously, this battle was very eye-catching and even related to the reputation of the eternal burial ground. If Jun Xiaoyaro were to emerge victorious in this battle, if word got out, wouldn't it mean that the son of God of the Jun family alone defeated all the young geniuses of the eternal burial ground? How would the burial ground feel then? However, after seeing Chu Tianba's power, the creatures of the burial ground were relieved. At the reincarnation pool, the battle between the holy Physique and the tyrant Physique finally began. Chu Tianba punched out, using the killing fist of the Way of the Monarch. The fist flew across the sky, and the fist light illuminated the sky. Killing intent swept out like a tide. This fist technique was very powerful. Sometimes, even without the fist landing, the killing intent was enough to shatter one's mind. Feeling that he was locked on by the killing intent, Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm. He also punched out, facing Chu Tianba head-on. Stupid. Seeing Jun Xiaoyaro attack, Chu Tianba snorted coldly. He was in the void god realm, which was enough to completely suppress Jun Xiaoyao. Not only did Jun Xiaoyao not avoid the attack, but he also faced it head-on. If this wasn't stupid, then what was? Jun Xiaoyao didn't say a word. The power of the sacred body of the ancients combined with the divine elephant overpowering divine elephant's strength of 10 billion pounds. That power caused the void to surge and the world to shake. Boom! The two fists collided. In an instant, magical power rippled in all directions, causing the earth to crack and the clouds to change color. With this punch, Chu Tianba's expression immediately changed. The fist that he had imagined did not appear. Chu Tianba only felt an incomparably terrifying divine power coming from Jun Xiaoyao's fist. The heavenly tyrant body was also known for its physical strength. It could kill true dragons and defeat godly phoenixes. But at that moment, Chu Tianba's body shook violently as he was forced back. Blood splattered from his fist. Chu Tianba was knocked back and injured. With just a single move, all of the burial earth creatures outside burial world were left speechless. They even rubbed their eyes, wondering if they were hallucinating. This was the transformed Chu Tianba, not the crippled state from before. However, he was still pushed back by Jun Xiaoyao. Shocking. Unparalleled shock. Jun Xiaoyao's performance had overturned their worldview. A divine fire realm cultivator repelled a nihility god realm cultivator. This was simply unbelievable. Young Master Jun is actually this strong? Qin Xiana covered her red lips with her jade-like hands as her beautiful eyes widened. The smiles on the faces of the Nether King Palace's experts froze. Tianming Burial Emperor was expressionless. One could imagine that Jun Xiaoyao's performance caused all of the burial earth creatures to feel uneasy. Inside burial world, Chu Tianba was pushed back. A trace of shock flashed across his eyes. Jun Xiaoyao also revealed a look of surprise. You're actually only slightly injured. As expected of the heavenly tyrant body, you're quite something. Jun Xiaoyao was indeed surprised. Even some peerless geniuses would at least have their arms shattered when facing his punch. Chu Tianba was only injured. It was already considered very good. The heavenly tyrant body was indeed worthy of its reputation. As for Chu Tianba, his mind was filled with question marks. Shouldn't I be the one saying this? Why did it feel like Jun Xiaoyao was the one with a higher cultivation level and was giving him pointers? I don't believe it. Chu Tianba attacked again. The blood in his body shook. After the baptism of the reincarnation pool, his death aura had turned into vitality once again. As his blood surged, the wound on his right hand quickly healed. It was obvious that the heavenly tyrant body's recovery ability was not inferior to the sacred body of the ancients. Jun Xiaoyao also attacked again. Ancient tablet sky splitting palm, Chu Tianba once again used another powerful divine ability. He turned his fist into a palm and struck out. The shadow of an ancient tablet seemed to appear, shattering the sky. Jun Xiaoyao formed the seal of the human ruler with one hand and the army control formula with the other. The two powerful techniques collided with Chu Tianba. Jun Xiaoyao's white robe fluttered. His divine light was peerless. He was like an immortal god, suppressing everything. Chu Tian's domineering aura was boundless. He was like a god of war, suppressing the world. Both of them had great power and boldness. At this moment, the aftermath of their battle was enough to crush ordinary geniuses. Boom! 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 The two's techniques collided. The ripples shook. Many tombstones around them were shattered and dust flew up. After a few more exchanges, Chu Tianba was forced back again. He coughed up blood. How is this possible? Your sacred body. Chu Tianba's eyes were no longer calm. He could feel that Jun Xiaoyao's sacred body of the ancients was not restrained by the heavenly path shackles. But how was this possible? Even if the Jun family behind him had piled countless resources on Jun Xiaoyao, it was impossible to completely break his shackles. The heavenly path shackles were a kind of restrictive rule that prevented the sacred body of the ancients from being too powerful. And now, Jun Xiaoyao's performance did not seem to be restricted at all. Oh! Did you sense it? Seeing the shock in Chu Tianba's eyes, Jun Xiaoyao's lips curved slightly. That's impossible. You must have cultivated some special technique. Chu Tianba shook his head. He would never believe such a ridiculous thing. Chu Tianba's eyes shone with a cold light. He first used a defensive spell. An aura of desolation flowed on the surface of his body. Finally, it condensed into an earthy yellow armor. It was the Great Baron Godly Armor Chi Art. The armor formed by the Great Baron Godly Armor Chi Art was difficult to penetrate in the same level, let alone Jun Xiaoyao, who was one level lower. Then, Chu Tianba made another move. This time, he used a powerful move. 7 styles of adjudication. Chu Tianba rotated his palms. All kinds of saber energy, sword energy, and ancient magical seals appeared. It was a powerful move. It was said that when the 7 styles were used, it could judge all living things. Jun Xiaoyao did not underestimate his opponent. He condensed the Blue Sky Ancestral Dragon Armor and the God Legion Cloak, a defensive technique from the Divine Elephant overpowering force. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyao, with the dragon armor and the cloak fluttering, seemed to have transformed from a transcendent immortal into an immortal god of war. Chu Tianba, I, the son of God, will let you know what true despair is. Jun Xiaoyao looked down on him like a god looking down on an ant. So what if Chu Tianba had transformed into the tyrant body of the heavens? He still did not care. Jun Xiaoyao stretched out his palm. Lightning flashed between his fingers and intertwined with an electric net. The great divine ability of the Thunder Emperor was used. Chapter 358. Jun Xiaoyao had yet to fully comprehend the Thunder Emperor's grand theurgy. However, Jun Xiaoyao was able to fully display some of its moves. For example, this move was the Thunder Star. The power of thunder surged in Jun Xiaoyao's palm. Around him, it condensed into shining stars. Every star contained the explosive power of thunder and lightning of the purest yang. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyao was like a divine king surrounded by stars. He had the power to suppress everything. All of the lightning stars pressed down on Chu Tianba. This is a grand theurgy. Chu Tianba's eyes also showed a hint of seriousness. He used the 7 styles of judgment to collide with Jun Xiaoyao's Thunder Emperor's grand theurgy. Ferocious thunderbolts and waves of magic power spread out. Jun Xiaoyao was like the Thunder Emperor. Billions of lightning bolts shot out with every move. Chu Tianba was like an unyielding god of war. His moves were fierce. The two of them were like meteors hitting Earth. They collided and confronted each other, bursting into endless sparks. This kind of battle was extremely shocking. All the creatures outside the burial realm were stunned. It didn't look like a battle between the younger generation at all. It looked more like a clash between the older generation. Boom! With a loud bang, Chu Tianba was once again blasted back. Although he was in the Void God realm, his physical strength and magical power were far inferior to Jun Xiaoyao's. Jun Xiaoyao's divine strength of 10 billion pounds had reached a certain limit. Even Chu Tianba, who had the tyrant body of the heavens, was far inferior. Your turtle shell is quite hard, but it still can't protect you. Jun Xiaoyao's bone of supremacy emitted a blazing brilliance in his chest. A vigorous and blazing light of tribulation blasted toward Chu Tianba. Damn it! Chu Tianba's expression was cold. If Jun Xiaoyao only had the sacred body of the ancients, Chu Tianba wouldn't be so passive. After all, the two physiques had their own advantages and disadvantages since ancient times. No one could completely suppress the other. But most importantly, Jun Xiaoyao didn't only have the sacred body of the ancients. He still had the bone of supremacy. Among the 3,000 body types, the bones of supremacy ranked in the top 30. It was not much weaker than the sacred body of the ancients and the tyrant body of the heavens. With the two supreme physiques stacked together, Chu Tianba's advantage in cultivation realm was already completely negated. Rumble. The light of calamity poured down on Chu Tianba's body without reservation. The prodigious Wild's God armor he had created was now riddled with cracks, and in the end, shattered. Chu Tianba spat out another mouthful of blood. What did it mean to be completely crushed? This was a complete suppression. Jun Xiaoyao didn't even have a speck of dust on his body, let alone being injured. Chu Tianba, on the other hand, was beaten to the point where he was forced to retreat again and again. The difference between the two was clear at a glance. No, this is impossible. How can my complete tyrant body be weaker than yours? Chu Tianba shook his head, unable to accept this result. If he was still an incomplete tyrant body, it would be excusable if he lost to Zhang Xiaoyao. But the problem was that his tyrant body had been restored. Even if it couldn't be restored to the perfect level of his previous life, it was still flawless enough. But now, he was still being suppressed by Zhang Xiaoyao. It was no wonder that Chu Tianba was doubting his life. Looking at Chu Tianba's somewhat unacceptable expression, Zhang Xiaoyao shook his head slightly and said, "I told you before that I would make you feel even more despair, but you didn't believe me. Now do you understand the difference between us? Tyrant body? You're just trash." Zhang Xiaoyao's merciless words made Chu Tianba's face turn red, and he was extremely furious. How could the arrogant tyrant body endure such humiliation? Impudent, I haven't lost yet. Chu Tianba's blood and qi surged, and the divine marks on his body began to light up. Those were the divine marks that belonged to the tyrant body, and they contained the supreme secret power of the tyrant body of the heavens. Chu Tianba punched out with his right fist, and his entire arm was lit up by the divine marks, and it was incomparably brilliant. At the same time, a terrifying wave of mana that could shatter the heavens spread out. This was the tyrant body of the heavens lineage, the tyrant fist. Once the tyrant fist was unleashed, the 8 barons would submit. In historical records, there was a rumor that the tyrant body of the heavens defeated the sacred body of the ancients with a single tyrant fist. Now, the tyrant fist reappeared, and its power was just as shocking. Zhang Xiaoyao, taste the power of my tyrant fist. Chu Tianba roared, and his black hair danced in the wind. His aura surged to the extreme, and he punched out, bringing with it endless waves of magical power. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes narrowed slightly. This move was a little interesting. Zhang Xiaoyao didn't dodge, but instead used the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Using a fist to fight a fist technique, 6 reincarnation vortexes accompanied Zhang Xiaoyao's fist, as if they could pull people into endless reincarnation. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist was a supreme fist technique, and it wasn't any weaker than the tyrant body of the heavens tyrant fist. The 2 fists collided, and the sound of bones cracking could be clearly heard. The fist that contained the power of reincarnation pressed down, and the muscles and bones of Chu Tianba's entire right arm were shattered. Cracks appeared, and blood splattered, glowing with a faint purple light. Ah! Chu Tianba couldn't help but let out a roar. His entire right arm was severely injured, and at the same time, his entire body was being crushed and eroded by the power of reincarnation, and he kept spitting out blood. Zhang Xiaoyao stepped out again, and stepped on Chu Tianba's body. 10 billion pounds of divine power burst out, and Chu Tianba coughed out blood again, mixed with broken organs. His entire body was like a cannonball, and he crashed to the ground with a loud bang, kicking up dust. Zhang Xiaoyao, in an extremely aggressive manner, had once again suppressed Chu Tianba. Outside the entire burial ground, all the creatures who saw this scene were shocked and dumbfounded. The cultivators of Pluto Palace were even more dumbfounded. At this point, Chu Tianba had almost used all his strength, and yet he was still suppressed by Zhang Xiaoyao. Who would dare to believe this? Tianming Burial Emperor's face finally turned gloomy. Will the result be the opposite of what we expected? Some of the creatures of burial ground looked at each other, and saw the uneasiness in each other's eyes. Will the prodigy of burial ground really be beaten to the ground by an outsider? Beside the reincarnation pool, Chu Tianba struggled to get up, and his bones cracked. Blood qi surged in his body, and he was recovering from his injuries. One had to admit that the tyrant body of the heavens was really strong, and it hadn't collapsed even now. What a good punching bag. You should be proud that you're able to last until now, Zhang Xiaoyao said truthfully. He wasn't being sarcastic, but rather, he was praising. After all, if it were any other prodigy, even the dragon race's prodigy, under Zhang Xiaoyao's attacks, their body would have collapsed. Chu Tianba was only severely injured, and that was already very rare. Zhang Xiaoyao, don't insult me. Perhaps you've forgotten that we, the tyrant body, still have a final trump card. In Chu Tianba's eyes, there was a kind of resolute madness burning. Could it be? Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. Chapter 359. For example, the sacred body of the ancients had 6 visions. The hegemon body of the heavens also had its own trump card, which was the 9 godly forms. If the sacred body of the ancients awakened all 6 visions, it could form the 6 paths of reincarnation and defeat all enemies in the world. As for the hegemon body of the heavens, if all 9 godly forms appeared at the same time, it could also intimidate and subdue the world. At this moment, Chu Tianba's blood surged as he burned his hegemon body bloodline. He was going to make a last stand. Chu Tianba stomped on the ground with one foot and his body rose into the air. Behind him, huge waves surged into the sky, sweeping out. It was as if there was a Kuan fish that rose into the air with him. Then, the Kuan fish turned into a giant peng. Its wings were like clouds in the sky, and its aura shook the heavens for thousands of miles. It was one of the 9 godly forms of the hegemon body, the Kuan peng. Chu Tianba, who had used the trump card of the hegemon body, had a ferocious aura. He was like a cannonball, charging straight at Zhang Xiaoyao. It could be said that this move shocked everyone. Outside the burial realm, all the creatures were extremely excited, looking forward to Chu Tianba's counterattack. In the face of Chu Tianba's move, Zhang Xiaoyao's expression was indifferent. If that's the case, then I will also use my sacred body vision to fight you. Zhang Xiaoyao also stomped on the void with one foot, and a brilliant light suddenly rose around him. Illusory figures of the saints appeared in the void. In the end, there were 10,000 shadows surrounding Zhang Xiaoyao, making Zhang Xiaoyao look like an immortal. It was the pilgrimage of the 10,000 saints. A terrifying pressure poured down. As soon as the pilgrimage of the 10,000 saints was used, Chu Tianba's power was almost suppressed by more than 30%. But Chu Tianba was not afraid. He still let out a long roar. The Kuan peng was unafraid of anything and collided with Zhang Xiaoyao's sacred body vision. Kaboom! It was as if countless stars were shattering. Chu Tianba's entire body seemed to have turned into a Kuan peng, shattering the shadows of the saints. The 9 godly forms of the hegemon body were indeed worthy of their reputation. The Kuan peng alone was enough to kill most geniuses. But to Zhang Xiaoyao, it was still not enough. While Zhang Xiaoyao was suppressing Chu Tianba with the reverence of 10,000 saints, he struck out with his palm again, intertwining with the power of lightning. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and thunder rumbled like dragons, striking down on Chu Tianba. This was the manifestation of one of the Thunder Emperor's great divine abilities, the thunder of heavenly punishment. The thunder of heavenly punishment crashed down on Chu Tianba. Chu Tianba raised his hand and swept out like the wings of a giant rock, setting off waves of spiritual energy. Rumbling sounds echoed in all directions as Chu Tianba was blasted back. His body was charred black and emitted a burnt smell. But Chu Tianba didn't back down. He roared into the sky, and his form changed again. An ancient and heavy bell appeared on the surface of his body. As the bell shook, it seemed to shatter the void in all directions. This was another transformation of the Overlord body's 9 great divine forms, Great Bell Dao Physique. The thunder of heavenly punishment landed on the Great Bell Daoist body but was unable to penetrate it. Chu Tianba activated the Great Bell Dao Physique, and invisible sound waves spread out, tearing the surrounding lightning apart. This Overlord body's divine form is quite interesting. Zhang Xiaoyao chuckled. Seeing Chu Tianba's ferocity, he wasn't worried at all. Instead, he found it interesting. After all, opponents who could make him use a few more moves were few and far between. Again, Zhang Xiaoyao clenched his fist, and tens of thousands of bolts of lightning appeared and gathered in Zhang Xiaoyao's palm, turning into a blazing flash of lightning. The flash of lightning seemed to be condensed from the lightning of the heavens, and it was so bright that it could blind people. 9 Tribulations Demon Punishing Thunder. Zhang Xiaoyao hurled it out with one hand. That blazing bolt of lightning seemed to have turned into a lightning spear, piercing right through the Great Bell Physique. This was one of the Thunder Emperor's great divine abilities, punishing the heavens and punishing the earth, destroying everything. Boom! The 9 Tribulations Demon Punishing Lightning landed on the Great Bell Dao Physique, and cracks appeared all over it. Chu Tianba also coughed out a mouthful of blood. Chu Tianba's aura was frenzied, and he didn't retreat. He changed his body again, and a true dragon appeared behind him. It was one of the 9 great divine forms, the true dragon celestial body. Chu Tianba kicked out, and it was like a true dragon swinging its tail, tearing the void apart. This kick was enough to tear any sky pride below the empty god realm to pieces. As for Jun Xiaoyao, the supreme bone in his chest blazed again, and light gathered as he used the hand of heaven. The giant hand imprinted with countless heavenly Dao runes broke through the air, and with a terrifying aura that could kill all living things, it pressed down on Chu Tianba. Even though Chu Tianba had transformed into the true dragon celestial body, under the suppression of the hand of heaven, he was still like an earthworm, spitting out blood and struggling. "Ah! I don't believe it. I am the overlord body of the heavens, unparalleled since ancient times. Who can defeat me?" Chu Tianba roared as he fought crazily. In the next moment, 4 figures appeared around him at the same time. The Kuan Peng divine form, the great Bel Taoist body, the true dragon celestial body, and the immortal phoenix feather. When the 4 divine forms were activated at the same time, the power was enough to destroy the heavens and earth. Even the hand of heaven was shaken away by the impact. "It seems like you can only use the 4 divine forms at most," Jun Xiaoyao said when he saw the situation. The 9 divine forms of the overlord body were the same as the 6 visions of the sacred body. They weren't innate, but had to be slowly comprehended. Although Chu Tianba had only comprehended the 4 divine forms, he was still considered a monster. "The 4 divine forms can also kill you." Chu Tianba roared with all his might, and with the power of the 4 divine forms, he charged towards Jun Xiaoyao. "All right, then let us use the sacred body and the overlord body to end this battle." Jun Xiaoyao's voice fell. At the same time as he displayed the reverence of the 10,000 saints, a majestic figure with surging immortal light appeared behind him. That figure stood towering between heaven and earth, exuding an unparalleled majesty. The galaxy seemed to be surrounding his waist, and the ancient stars seemed to be just decorations around him. It was the sacred body vision. Immortal King descends to the 9 heavens. At this moment, the reverence of the 10,000 saints surrounded Jun Xiaoyao, and the Immortal King appeared behind him. This terrifying vision made Jun Xiaoyao look like the descendant of the gods, the son of heaven and earth. "It's over." Jun Xiaoyao once again displayed the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, supported by the divine elephant overpowering force and the immortal bone of the great all-embracing heaven. Then, he added the power of the 2 sacred body visions. The reverence of the 10,000 saints had the power to weaken the enemy's combat power. The Immortal King descends to the 9 heavens was an invincible Dao technique that could greatly enhance Jun Xiaoyao's various divine abilities. For example, the 6 paths of reincarnation fist that Jun Xiaoyao displayed at this moment was several times more powerful with the enhancement of the Immortal King descends to the 9 heavens. It was as if the Immortal King behind Jun Xiaoyao had punched out with him. Rumble. Heaven and earth surged, and dharmic powers shook. The 2 sacred body visions and the overlord body's 4 divine forms collided fiercely. The fluctuations were indescribable, and the entire 10,000 spirits graveyard seemed to be razed to the ground. The earth cracked, and the heavens shook. Outside the burial ground, the light screen in the sky was covered by endless smoke and dust. All the living beings of the burial ground and the major forces stared at the light screen. What would the result of the battle between the sacred body and the overlord body be? Chapter 360. The sacred body of the ancients and the tyrant body of the firmament had been enemies since ancient times. In the past, they had clashed many times and won and lost. In this era, the sacred body of the ancients and the tyrant body of the firmament were at the same level. Who would win and who would lose? All the creatures in the burial ground were watching nervously. From the perspective of the burial ground, they hoped that Chu Tianba would win. Cough, cough. The sound of blood coughing was heard from the dust. A gust of wind blew, dispersing the dust. Beside the reincarnation pool, Chu Tianba knelt on the ground with one knee. His bronze body was cracked and light purple blood flowed from the wound. At this moment, Chu Tianba was like a cracked porcelain that would break with a touch. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro was still standing in the void with a calm expression. Crack! The sound of metal cracking was heard. It was Jun Xiaoyao's azure sky dragon armor cracking. Then, the blue sky ancestral dragon armor shattered into green light spots that filled the sky. The cloak of the gods on his back also dissipated. However, Jun Xiaoyaro did not show any signs of injury. Even his aura was not chaotic. It was clear who was better and who was worse, who won and who lost. Jun Xiaoyaro had completely defeated Chu Tianba. Whoosh! Outside the burial ground, an uproar spread in all directions like a tide. No one expected this to be the result. After the transformation, Chu Tianba, whose body was perfect and had reached the void god realm, was still no match for Jun Xiaoyao. He had even used the 9 godly forms of the tyrant body, but he could not cause any damage to Jun Xiaoyao. What was despair? This was despair. All the creatures in the burial ground were devastated. Their faces were gloomy as if they had suffered a huge blow. Jun Xiaoyaro alone defeated the 10 minor kings of the burial ground. No one could fight him. The experts of the Pluto Palace were in disbelief. They froze on the spot as if they had been struck by lightning. Tianming Burial King's aura was a little unstable. Chu Tianba, whom he had high hopes for, had lost so miserably. Is there anything in this world that young Master Jun cannot do? Qin Xiana was a little dazed. Jun Xiaoyaro had once again refreshed her understanding of him. So there really was such an outstanding man in this world. The ghost-masked female burial emperor was instead the calmest one. Under the mask, there was a faint light in his eyes. At this moment, at the edge of the pool of reincarnation, Chu Tianba's mind went blank as he knelt on the ground with one knee in a daze. Before Chu Tianba could even react, he had already lost. Jun Xiaoyaro descended from the sky step by step. Then, he walked to the edge of the pool of samsara and picked up the 9 profundity samsara immortal grass. I've finally accomplished my goal. After storing the 9 profundity reincarnation undying grass into his spatial magic tool, Jun Xiaoyaro finally heaved a sigh of relief. He had achieved his goal of coming to the burial ground. Only now did Chu Tianba recover from his daze. His entire face was filled with a crazed expression. How is this possible? How is this possible? I am the Overlord body, the unparalleled Overlord body. Chu Tianba mumbled as if he had gone mad. He could not accept this bloody reality. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were very cold, with a faint trace of pity. From the beginning to the end, you were wrong. Ridiculously wrong. I was wrong. How was I wrong? Chu Tianba's expression suddenly became ferocious. In this world, I am the only one who can be called unparalleled throughout the ages. Jun Xiaoyaro flicked his sleeves and placed them behind his back. His calm words carried a domineering aura. Jun Xiaoyaro was the only one who could be called unparalleled throughout the ages. You! Chu Tianba's chest shook as he spat out a mouthful of blood. His Dao heart suffered a huge blow. Jun Xiaoyao's personality was even more domineering than the Overlord body, unparalleled throughout the ages. He was the only one. How crazy and arrogant did a person have to be able to say such arrogant words? It's over. Jun Xiaoyaro pushed his palm forward, wanting to end Chu Tianba's life. The 2 constitutions could not coexist peacefully. Only the fall of one side could end the battle. No, I can't accept this. Chu Tianba shook his head. How could he die like this? There was a loud thud. Chu Tianba took out the soul-reaping bell again, wanting to use it to save his life. With life, there was still a chance to rise again. If he died, there would be nothing left. Chu Tianba did not think that he could live again. Jun Xiaoyaro saw this and shook his head. I knew you wouldn't give up, but the result will not change. He also took out the broken ancient armor given by Jiang Daoshu to resist the power of the soul-reaping bell. At the same time, he slammed his palm towards Chu Tianba's chest. A series of cracking sounds rang out. Chu Tianba's 5 viscera and 6 bowels, including his bones, were all shattered. Even his primordial spirit was shaken violently and was about to collapse. Chu Tianba's entire body was blasted above the reincarnation pool. He kept coughing out blood mixed with his internal organs. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were indifferent. He knew that Chu Tianba was destined to die. Cough cough. Zhang Xiaoyao, are you very proud? After feeling that his life was about to end, Chu Tianba's face was filled with madness. Proud? What's there to be proud of about stepping on an ant? Zhang Xiaoyao replied indifferently. There was no sense of accomplishment at all. Poochie. Chu Tianba coughed out blood again. F***ck. He was about to die. Couldn't he say something nice? Chu Tianba was about to explode. Even so, he was still grinning maniacally. His teeth were stained with blood as he said in a chilling manner, Zhang Xiaoyao, there is a cycle of reincarnation in the heavens. The heavens will spare no one. One day, you will feel the pain I feel right now. Hair. Who will the heavens spare? I, the Son of God, will rule the world in the future. What is the heavens? Zhang Xiaoyao said indifferently. He never believed in karma or the heavenly path. With enough strength, one could dominate everything. Seeing Zhang Xiaoyao's indifferent attitude of invincibility, even Chu Tianba was shocked. This person's invincible mind was almost unshakable. Zhang Xiaoyao, it's too early to say that. I have a feeling that in this life, the overlord of the tyrant bloodline will appear. He will end your invincible legend. Chu Tianba's words made Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flash. Overlord. He had heard of this title before. It did not refer to a single person, but to the strongest of the tyrant bloodline. In the past, the tyrant body of the firmament had also had an overlord. In every life, as long as there was an overlord, the sacred body of the ancients would usually be at a disadvantage. In times when there was no overlord, the sacred body of the ancients would be at an advantage. There was no other reason. The overlord was the ultimate sublimation of the tyrant bloodline. In all aspects, he was stronger than the average tyrant body of the firmament. The average sacred body of the ancients did not have much of an advantage in front of the overlord. So what if the overlord is born? You won't be able to see it anyway. Zhang Xiaoyao was not affected by the news. When the overlord was born, Zhang Xiaoyao's strength would be unimaginably strong. Hair. Zhang Xiaoyao, are you sure you can get out of here alive? Chu Tianba suddenly revealed a creepy smile. Then, he suddenly took out a pitch-black seal. At the same time, the blood in his body exploded, releasing the last of the light and heat. Hades seal breaker, unseal. Chu Tianba used the last of his strength to activate the Hades seal breaker. Then, he threw it directly into the reincarnation pool. In an instant, the world shook and the burial realm trembled. Chapter 361. No one would have thought that such a scene would happen. Even Zhang Xiaoyao was stunned for a moment. In this short period of time, Chu Tianba had completed his final mission with his life. The Nether King's seal was given to him by his master, the Heaven Underworld Burial Emperor, to throw into the living reincarnation pool. Then, the living reincarnation pool rumbled as if it was boiling. The pool water surged. The sealing power of the 10,000 spirits graveyard began to gradually disintegrate. At the same time, the seal of the burial world also trembled. This is... Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. Could the living reincarnation pool be the core of the sealing power of the burial world? Chu Tianba's action was to break the seal of the burial world. Chu Tianba's body began to collapse and his aura was about to fall. He hissed and roared. Master, avenge me. After roaring, Chu Tianba's body collapsed and his entire body turned into a pool of flesh and blood. A heavenly tyrant body had fallen. At the same time, the entire 10,000 spirits graveyard was trembling. The dusty inscriptions on the tombstones flickered and there were sealing runes on them. Below the tombstones, cracks began to appear and a thick aura of death rolled out. Under the 10,000 spirits graveyard, there seemed to be a group of burial world bosses sealed. But what was more shocking was that there seemed to be some strange movement in the depths of the burial world. There was a terrifying aura of inheritance. The entire burial world was in chaos. At the same time, outside the burial world. Seeing Chu Tianba fall, the eyes of the entire Nether King's palace turned red. When the Heaven Underworld Burial Emperor heard the words Master, avenge me, his body trembled slightly. The Heaven Underworld Burial Emperor had high hopes for Chu Tianba and even wanted him to take charge of the Nether King's palace in the future. But Chu Tianba died in front of his eyes. A cold killing intent flashed in the Heaven Underworld Burial Emperor's eyes. At this moment, the seal outside the burial world seemed to be unstable and began to break. Seeing this, the burial earth beings finally came to their senses. It turned out that the Nether King's palace had long planned to break the seal of the burial world. The heavens are about to change. The burial earth creatures here were also shivering, sensing great terror. After the great storm more than 10 years ago, was the burial ground, which had been peaceful for a long time, going to have a great storm again? The Heaven Underworld Burial Emperor's aura surged, and the Supreme Being's aura spread out in all directions. He was the first to make a move, directly entering Burial Realm. The seal of the Burial Realm was on the verge of shattering. It couldn't stop Supreme Being experts from entering. Seeing the Heaven Underworld Burial Emperor enter, all the living beings present could no longer remain calm. Was Tianming Burial Emperor going to kill Jun Xiaoyao? When the ghost-masked female Burial Emperor saw this, her cold eyes faintly flashed under her mask, and she also entered in a flash. While everyone was still in shock, another rumbling sound came from the void. The successor of the Jun family has gone too far. This voice was deep and low, ancient and full of vicissitudes. A bone dragon with a body that stretched for thousands of miles broke through the void. Its dragon claws seemed to be able to tear the sky apart. In the end, the bone dragon transformed into a middle-aged man wearing white bone armor and a pair of white dragon wings on his back. A ferocious Supreme Being aura poured out in torrents. It's the Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor of the Corpse Dragon tribe. He has also appeared. The appearance of the Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor caused an uproar in all directions. However, the shock was still not over. In the void, a sea of blood overturned and swept over the sky. An old man wearing a blood-red robe stepped on the sea of blood that filled the sky. His monstrous murderous aura shook the stars and shook the hearts of the people. It's the Bloodfiend tribe's Bloodfiend tribe's Bloodfiend tribe. The ground shook and cracked. Thousands of miles of yellow soil burst open, and a giant demonic spider the size of a mountain ridge appeared. In the end, it transformed into a man with 8 arms and a powerful aura. The heavenly spider demon lord of the 8-armed spider demon tribe. A cold aura surged as a black-cloaked man carrying an ancient coffin appeared. It's the corpse refining sect's sect master, the legendary Coffin Man. It's rumored that a corpse emperor lies in his coffin. Seeing the Coffin Man, many living beings in burial ground were enraged. The rumored corpse emperor was a terrifying existence that could threaten Supreme Being experts. In addition, a skinny old man in a purple robe appeared. The appearance of this old man made all the living beings in burial ground feel suffocated. They were speechless. Could that be the rumored old man Joyo? The Joyo Ao that died in the hands of the Jun family's son of God was cultivated by him? When the old man Joyo appeared, the entire crowd boiled over. This was a top expert who had hidden himself from the world. He did not have any forces and only cultivated the Joyo Ao. Now that the Joyo Ao had fallen in the hands of Jun Xiaoyao, this old man Joyo would not let this matter rest. Then, in addition to these top experts, the buried emperors of the heaven-devouring demonic Python tribe, Rakshasa tribe, and undead spirit tribe also appeared. In addition, the king of the Azura demon kingdom also appeared. He was a bearded middle-aged man wearing blood-red armor. They dare to make a move. The king of the Azura demon kingdom revealed a thoughtful look. On the other side, in the void, a terrifying expert with grey wings on his back was also observing the situation. He was the buried emperor of the Fallen Winged tribe. The Fallen Winged tribe was also the first force to submit to Jun Xiaoyao. Do they not want to live anymore? Or have they already forgotten the tragic situation 10 years ago? The buried emperor of the Fallen Winged tribe muttered to himself. All the living beings in burial ground fell into a state of absolute shock. They did not expect the big shots of the 10 regions of burial ground to appear one after another. Usually, these big shots only existed in rumors. They were incomparably high and incomparably mysterious, watching the ups and downs of the burial ground. But now, they had all appeared. It was obvious that they were about to make a big move. After appearing, the Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor, Blood Fiend Ancestor, Sky Spider Demon Ancestor, and other top experts also broke into burial ground. Seeing these experts enter burial ground, the living beings in burial ground could not hold back anymore. They all followed closely behind, wanting to watch the show. At this moment, beside the reincarnation pool, Jun Xiaoyaro was frowning. He did not expect the situation to develop to this point. Logically speaking, Jun Xiaoyaro should have left after obtaining the 9 Wonders Reincarnation Immortal Grass. But after seeing the reincarnation pool, Jun Xiaoyaro dismissed the idea of leaving directly. With such a great opportunity in front of him, it would be stupid not to make good use of it. If he could completely refine the energy of this reincarnation pool, Jun Xiaoyao's strength would definitely skyrocket. It could be said that even in the immortal ancient world, a great opportunity like the reincarnation pool was extremely rare. Jun Xiaoyaro naturally could not miss it. But now, a great change had occurred in burial ground. The sealing power seemed to be about to shatter, so Jun Xiaoyaro naturally could not peacefully cultivate here. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro was thinking, waves of powerful auras rushed over from the distance. A huge demonic palm print with an imposing aura covered the sky like a pitch-black sky, pressing down on Jun Xiaoyaro. Chapter 362. Do you really dare to attack? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were filled with coldness as he looked at the incoming gigantic demonic palm. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro was about to use the ancient armor to fight back, on the other side of the sky, red spider lilies bloomed. They were incomparably beautiful and carried with them the aura of death. The red spider lilies collided with the demonic palm, and the power was earth-shattering. It was as if thousands of stars had exploded at the same time. In a battle between Supreme Being experts, even if it was just a simple move, it was enough to affect heaven and earth and cause great destruction. Ghost-masked Burial Emperor, you've gone too far. In the void, the Heaven Underworld Burial Emperor's cold and angry voice sounded. He didn't expect that the ghost-masked Burial Emperor would protect Jun Xiaoyaro to this extent. Even in this situation, she still wanted to protect Jun Xiaoyaro. Before my karma is clear, no one is allowed to touch him. Under the mask, the ghost-masked Burial Emperor's cold voice was filled with killing intent. It was almost instinctive for her to protect Jun Xiaoyaro. Moreover, the ghost-masked Burial Emperor also wanted to know what kind of karma she had with Jun Xiaoyaro. If Jun Xiaoyaro died now, this karma would never be resolved. It wasn't a good thing for the ghost-masked Burial Emperor. Jun Xiaoyaro has committed a great sin in the burial ground. It's impossible for him to walk out of the burial ground alive. The Heaven Underworld Burial Emperor's voice was cold. As his voice fell, the Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor, Blood Fiend Ancestor, Sky Spider Demon Elder, Corpse Refining Sect Master, Old Man Joyo, and other burial emperors rushed over. Every one of them was an expert above the Supreme Being level. The appearance of one of them was enough to shock everyone, not to mention all of them appearing together. Moreover, the most important thing was that the person they were targeting was merely a junior with cultivation in the Divine Flame realm. A group of Supreme Being experts targeting a junior in the Divine Fire realm. If word got out, many people's eyeballs would pop out. If it was an ordinary genius, their legs would have gone soft and they would have collapsed on the ground. However, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were calm and cold when facing the group of burial emperors. It was like a bottomless abyss. The many burial earth beings who had followed behind also had complicated feelings when they saw this scene. On one hand, they did not expect that a group of burial emperors would fall to the point of targeting a junior. On the other hand, Jun Xiaoyao's demeanor alone was enough to make even those who didn't have a good impression of him admire him. Young Master Jun. In the crowd, a beautiful figure flashed over. It was Lang Huan. She tried to comprehend the Lightning Emperor's great divine ability to no avail. When she came out to search for other opportunities, she saw a group of burial earth creatures entering. She sensed that burial realm might have undergone some changes, so she followed him here. He didn't expect to see such a scene. Many burial emperors were trying to kill Jun Xiaoyaro alone. Lang Huan, come back. In the skies, the Azura ruler waved his hand, stopping Lang Huan. Now was not the time to express opinions. Every action could have far-reaching consequences. Even though the Azura Demon Empire was the influence that had the least enmity with Jun Xiaoyaro, the Azura Emperor still didn't want to recklessly wade into these muddy waters. Let's go and help young Master Jun Langhuan's eyes were filled with anxiety. She didn't want Jun Xiaoyaro to die. Don't worry. It's not that easy for the Jun family members to die. The Azura ruler's eyes were deep as he looked into the depths of the 10,000 spirits graveyard. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyaro, who was the center of attention, was incomparably calm. His gaze swept across Tianming, Burial Emperor, and the others as he said casually, "You beat up the young one and the old one comes. Can't you change your tactics? Jun family's junior, don't you know that you've committed a heinous crime?" Tianming Burial Emperor released a terrifying pressure. However, it was useless against Jun Xiaoyaro. Crime. Killing one is a crime, killing 10,000 is a hero. This son of God still thinks that I haven't killed enough. Jun Xiaoyao's tone was sharp. You want me to back down or lower my head? It was impossible. Others might be arrogant for a while, but Jun Xiaoyaro would be arrogant for life. With this talent and background, if he still acted like a coward, he would be a real coward. Don't be a coward, just be strong. That was Jun Xiaoyao's principle. The stronger the enemy, the more Jun Xiaoyaro would not back down. I know what you're relying on. It's the Jun family behind you, but so what? Now that you've offended almost the entire burial ground, the Jun family can't protect you. Tianming Burial Emperor's voice was filled with killing intent. That's right. Even if the Jun family intervenes, this matter will not be settled. The Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor also spoke. Seeing this, the creatures of the burial ground regained their senses. Jun Xiaoyaro did not just kill creatures from one or two forces. 90% of the forces of the burial ground had been offended by Jun Xiaoyaro. If it was only one or two forces, they might be afraid of the Jun family. For example, the Fallen Feather Clan would never have dared to go against the Jun family on their own. However, there were too many forces that wanted to kill Jun Xiaoyaro. The King of Hell Palace, the Corpse Dragon Tribe, the Eight-Armed Spider Demon Tribe, the Sky-Devouring Demonic Python Tribe, the Blood Fiend Tribe, the Corpse Refining Sect, and other forces. There was also Old Man Joyo who did not have any forces. With so many top forces and powerhouses working together, even the Jun family could not do as they pleased, right? It seems that the Jun family's son of God made a mistake this time. He underestimated the danger of these forces. A creature of the burial ground shook his head. Perhaps Jun Xiaoyaro would fail in the eternal burial ground. So, you're after my life, then? Jun Xiaoyaro asked in a flat tone. I'll give you a chance. Kill yourself. Tianming Burial Emperor said coldly. If possible, he did not want to do it himself. Whoever killed Jun Xiaoyaro would probably be targeted fiercely by the Jun family. Therefore, no one wanted to kill Jun Xiaoyaro personally. Jun Xiaoyaro killing himself was the best choice. Hee hee. Jun Xiaoyaro laughed as if he had just heard the funniest joke in the world. What do you mean? Tianming Burial Emperor's face darkened. Who gave you the courage to speak to me like that? Jun Xiaoyaro scolded coldly. Who gave you the courage to speak to me like that? These high and mighty burial emperors of the burial earth, did they have a screw loose in their heads or did water get into their heads? They had no idea who the person they were threatening was. Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's words, even the high and mighty burial emperors, who were calm and composed, felt a surge of anger. There's no need to say more. This kid is too arrogant. Let's attack together. I don't believe that the Jun family has the guts to destroy all the forces in the burial ground. The heavenly spider demon ancestor of the Eight-Armed Spider Demon Clan said coldly. That's right. Although the Jun family is strong, they can't do anything in the immortal realm, let alone in the burial ground. Moreover, the burial ground is about to be broken. I'm afraid the Jun family will be in big trouble. The blood demon ancestor also said coldly. The 10,000 spirits graveyard would be broken soon. The sealed big shots of the burial ground hated the Jun family to the core. Not to mention, there were still terrifying existences in the depths of the burial ground since ancient times. It would not be easy for the Jun family to go deep into the burial ground and destroy all the forces there. After understanding this point, Tianming Zhenhuang and the others no longer hesitated or feared. They must kill Jun Xiaoyaro today. Chapter 363. How dare you? Seeing that Tianming Burial Emperor and the others were still determined to attack, the ghost-masked Burial Emperor let out a cold shout filled with killing intent. Ghost-masked Burial Emperor, although you're strong, you can't stop all of us. This kid will die today, Tianming Burial Emperor said coldly. Let the two of us stop her. The Rakshasa Burial Emperor and the Necromancer Burial Emperor stood out at the same time. If it was just one Burial Emperor facing the ghost-masked Burial Emperor, it would be quite dangerous. Thus, the two Burial Emperors attacked at the same time to stop the ghost-masked Burial Emperor. The three Burial Emperors immediately engaged in a great battle. It had to be said that the ghost-masked Burial Emperor was very strong. As she waved her hand, parameter flowers bloomed. The law of death surged out and intertwined in the void. The Rakshasa Burial Emperor and the Necromancer Burial Emperor's faces changed. Although they were all Burial Emperors, there was still a difference in strength. After all, there were 7 realms in the Sovereign Realm. The Rakshasa Burial Emperor and the Necromancer Burial Emperor were weaker than the ghost-masked Burial Emperor. It was already very difficult for them to hold her back. On the other side, Tianming Burial Emperor and the others naturally wouldn't delay. They immediately charged towards Jun Xiaoyaro. Tianming Burial Emperor naturally wouldn't act alone. If he were to kill Jun Xiaoyaro alone, the Jun family would definitely point the finger at him first. Thus, Tianming Burial Emperor was very smart. He didn't attack alone, but together with the other Burial Emperors. Their attacks were very casual. They only pointed out a finger. However, with so many Burial Emperors attacking at the same time, it was enough to kill Jun Xiaoyaro 1,000,000 times. Is the Jun family's son of God going to die? Although I hate him, I have to admit that the Jun family's son of God is indeed a peerless monster. I didn't expect him to die in such a situation. It's already very ostentatious. A group of Burial Emperors sending him on his way. Which young genius would receive such treatment? The surrounding Burial Earth beings all sighed in amazement. Even if Jun Xiaoyaro died, his deeds would probably be passed down for many years. Young Master Jun. Lang Huan and Qin Xiana's eyes trembled. Is Jun Xiaoyaro really going to fall here? Who can take the life of Jun Xiaoyaro? Not even the heavens can, let alone you. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes shot out 3 feet of divine light. He took out the ancient armor again. An ancient and vicissitude aura flowed around it, as if it was the sturdiest barrier. Rumble. The casual attacks of the group of buried emperors were actually blocked by this ancient armor. There is something. Heaven Spider Demon Venerable narrowed his eyes slightly. As the son of God of the Jun family, it was only natural for him to have some protective treasures, so they were not surprised. Everyone, continue attacking. This ancient armor won't last long, the corpse refining sect leader said coldly. The coffin on his back opened, and a monstrous corpse and murderous aura surged out. Then, a corpse emperor appeared. Its power was extremely great, making even supreme beings' expressions change slightly. The corpse emperor stretched out his palm. His fingernails were as sharp as blades, and they tore the void apart, creating a pitch-black spatial crack. The corpse emperor's palm landed on the ancient armor, and a terrifying shockwave was produced. More cracks appeared on the ancient armor. Although it was a protective item given by Jiang Daoshu, the one who attacked was a supreme being after all. An ancient armor wouldn't be able to last for long. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was still calm, and his eyes were deep with a hint of coldness. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's calmness, the killing intent in Tianming Burial Emperor and the others' hearts surged. Jun Xiaoyaro simply did not put the group of buried emperors in his eyes. Just an ancient armor and you're so confident. Let's see how I break it. Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor saw the situation and shouted coldly. He raised his hand, and a white bone blade made of a white dragon horn fell into his hand. It was a Boundary Emperor weapon, the Dragon Bone Sacred Saber. Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor activated the Dragon Bone Sacred Saber and slashed down. It was as if the heavens and the earth were split into two. A supreme being's cultivation was enough to unleash the power of a boundary emperor weapon. This slash was enough to split the earth. Crack. After the ancient armor endured this slash, it finally shattered in front of everyone. Die. Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor's slash did not weaken as it fell on Jun Xiaoyao's head. He did not care if he killed Jun Xiaoyao with his own hands. As long as Jun Xiaoyao died, all the buried emperors present would not be able to escape responsibility. The Jun family might be the first to target him, but after that, they would still hold Tianming Burial Emperor and the others accountable. Instead of wasting time, he might as well end it with a single slash. You're courting death. Seeing that Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor was about to kill Jun Xiaoyao, the ghost-masked buried emperor shouted coldly with killing intent. Her hair fluttered, and her killing intent changed the color of the sky. Heaven and earth turned upside down. Bang! The ghost-masked buried emperor formed a complicated hand seal and hit the Luosha buried emperor, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. He was instantly severely injured. Then, a red spider lily with the law of death surrounded the dead spirit burial emperor. He was also severely injured. Just as the ghost-masked buried emperor was about to save him, a purple-robed old man stood in front of her. Ghost-masked buried emperor, I think you've lost your mind. You're going against us for an ant from the outside world. The one who stood in front of the ghost-masked buried emperor was Old Man Joyo. Old Man Joyo has made his move. Seeing Old Man Joyo standing in front of the ghost-masked buried emperor, all the buried earth beings could not help but exclaim. Old Man Joyo's true form was also a Joyo Ao. Although his bloodline was not pure, he was still a mixed blood Joyo Ao in the Supreme Realm. Old Man Joyo kept a low profile and did not have any power behind him. However, his strength was enough to be ranked in the top 3 among the buried emperors in the 10 regions of burial earth. He could compete with the Tianming Burial Emperor and the Ghost-Masked Buried Emperor. You want to stop me? The Ghost-Masked Buried Emperor's beautiful eyes shot out an extremely cold gaze. If Old Man Joyo made his move, she would not be able to escape. Needless to say, this kid will definitely die today. Old Man Joyo's proudest successor, the Joyo Ao, had been killed by Jun Xiaoyao. Naturally, he wanted to kill Jun Xiaoyao as well. Old Man Joyo made his move. Purple light waves swept out, shattering the void for thousands of miles. The Joyo divine ability was used, destroying the universe. Seeing that the ghost-masked buried emperor was blocked, all the buried earth beings shook their heads. It seemed that everything was over. The dragon skeleton buried emperor's blade was about to land on Jun Xiaoyao's head. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was still indifferent. It was as if he did not care about life and death. At this moment, a zither-sound blade suddenly came, and with a clang, the dragon skeleton sacred blade was knocked aside. Who is it? The dragon skeleton buried emperor roared. In front of Jun Xiaoyao, the void shattered, and a woman in a grey robe with fluttering sleeves appeared. Her black hair fluttered in the wind, covering half of her face. Even though half of her face was exposed, it was still as beautiful as snow, stunning and dreamy. Although the woman was extremely beautiful, the words that came out of Yingtao Sandan's mouth contained an earth-shattering killing intent. How dare you harm the young master? Kill without mercy. Chapter 364. The woman who appeared was naturally Jun Xiaoyao's protector, Arju. She had been guarding outside the ancient burial ground. When she sensed that Jun Xiaoyao was in danger, she directly broke through the void and came over. She knew that Jun Xiaoyao, being the precious child of the Jun family and the Jiang family of the clan of the ancients, must have a lot of protective items on him. However, Arju was still worried and came personally. To her, Jun Xiaoyao could not be harmed in the slightest. Even if Jun Xiaoyao only had a small scratch, Arju would blame herself. Arju, you're here. Jun Xiaoyao smiled faintly as he looked at the beautiful silhouette standing in front of him. Actually, she did not have to come. Jun Xiaoyao dared to come to the ancient burial ground because he was confident. Young master, let Arju protect him. Arju's hair fluttered, and her face was filled with determination. Jun Xiaoyao was stunned. He shook his head and smiled. Although it sounded a little suspicious of a man being protected by a woman, it did sound a little suspicious. However, he had to admit that the feeling of being protected by a beauty was quite good. As for the ancient burial ground creatures present, they were all stunned. Their jaws almost fell to the ground. Who was this beauty that suddenly appeared? Why did it feel like another ancient burial queen? Moreover, she was also here to protect Jun Xiaoyao. How good was Jun Xiaoyao's luck with women? Could he be protected by a beautiful woman just because he was handsome? The burial earth creatures here all became jealous, sour to the point where they wanted to die. Damn it, this was the peak of life. There was no comparison at all. Under such circumstances, you still dare to appear to protect this child? The dragon skeleton burial king held the dragon bone sacred blade and said coldly, "With so many buried emperors here, unless it was the Jun family that sent out the ancestors, who would dare to block them? Ha, a mere quasi-supreme dares to appear. Should I say that you're loyal or stupid?" Tianming burial king's expression was calm. Under such circumstances, even a supreme being would not be enough to protect Jun Xiaoyao. Not to mention a quasi-supreme martial artist. Arju did not say anything. She placed a zither in front of her. At the same time, her aura soared, and her hair fluttered. In her eyes, a terrifying scene of the sun being destroyed and stars sinking appeared. Chaotic light shot out. That's Polychoria. The sky spider demon Venerable was shocked. These burial kings finally understood why a Jew had the courage to appear. Although her cultivation was quasi-supreme, with her Polychoria was not much weaker than a supreme being. Ajiu's Polychoria divine ability was far superior to Jun Lingsang's. When the dual pupils were cultivated to the highest level, it was very normal for them to challenge those of a higher level. Heavenly Song of the Tribulation Immortals. Arju's slender fingers stroked the strings of the zither, and the sound of the zither spread out. At first, it sounded like the sound of a celestial being. However, if one listened carefully, it contained the intent of a heavenly tribulation. The terrifying destructive sound of the zither swept towards the dragon skeleton burial king. Even the dragon skeleton burial king became more cautious. He held the dragon bone sacred saber and fought against Arju. At this moment, the Blood Fiend race's patriarch Bloodfiend's eyes flashed fiercely. He attacked Jun Xiaoyao. Their race's prodigy had been burned to ashes by Jun Xiaoyao's Tuoshi ancient emperor flame. Naturally, the Blood Fiend race's patriarch wanted to take revenge. Therefore, the Blood Fiend race's patriarch attacked. His eyes were cold and contemptuous. He pointed out a finger, wanting to kill Jun Xiaoyao with a single finger. This was also a disguised form of humiliation. Seeing the Blood Fiend race's patriarch pointing at him, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed with a dark light. Arju's expression changed. He wanted to stop it, but the dragon skeleton burial king blocked him. "You're courting death." At this moment, Arju was no longer as calm as an ancient well and as quiet as a virgin. In order to protect Jun Xiaoyao, she seemed to have turned into a goddess of war. Terrifying black light shot out from her eyes. It collapsed the void and charged towards the dragon skeleton burial king. The dragon skeleton burial king was caught off guard and was injured. In the face of the Blood Fiend race's patriarch's contemptuous attack, Jun Xiaoyao's lips suddenly curled into a smile. It was an even more contemptuous smile. Seeing this smile, the Blood Fiend race's patriarch's heart skipped a beat. He was confused. He was about to die. How could he still have such an expression? However, in the next moment, the Blood Fiend race's patriarch understood why Jun Xiaoyao had such a smile. Jun Xiaoyao took out a broken mottled ancient sword. The entire sword was simple and unadorned. It did not have any sharp aura. However, such an ordinary ancient sword swept towards the Blood Fiend race's patriarch at lightning speed. Then, the Blood Fiend race's patriarch's body was split into two. The Blood Fiend race's patriarch did not even have time to react. He was still pointing his finger at Jun Xiaoyao. However, when his finger was 10 feet away from Jun Xiaoyao, he could no longer use any magic power. How is this possible? The Blood Fiend race's patriarch lowered his head slightly. He realized that the lower half of his body was gone. His old eyes suddenly widened. They were filled with horror. The broken ancient sword suddenly emitted an aura that made the heavens tremble. A blurry figure appeared, holding a broken ancient sword in his hand. How dare you attack the descendant of the Jiang family? Kill without mercy. The vague figure was not a remnant soul. It was just a wisp of aura that was attached to the broken ancient sword. However, it was this wisp of aura that activated the broken ancient sword and split a prime expert into two. Who would believe it? Tianming Burial King and the others were shocked. They did not expect such a situation to happen. No, how is this possible? I am a prime expert, a prime expert. The blood fiend race's aura surged. Demonic blood spread out from his body, trying to merge the two halves of his body. After all, he was a prime expert. Even if his body was chopped into pieces, he could still recover. However, that wisp of aura did not give the blood fiend race's patriarch a chance to recover. With the broken ancient sword in his hand, the blood fiend race's patriarch attacked at lightning speed. Tianming Burial King and the others could not help in time. The next moment, puff, the broken ancient sword pierced the blood fiend race's patriarch's head. Then, a terrifying murderous aura surged out. It directly shattered the blood fiend race's primordial spirit and body. The blood fiend race's patriarch did not even have time to scream before he died. An ancient sword killed a prime expert. Wow! Endless exclamations could be heard from all directions. What was shocking? That was shocking. A prime expert had died in front of their eyes. Moreover, he was almost killed in an instant. That was extremely terrifying. They felt a chill from head to toe. They could not help but look at Zhun Xiaoyao again. They realized that Zhun Xiaoyao's expression was as calm as before. Obviously, that was within his expectations. Hiss, countless gasps could be heard. Zhun Xiaoyao had plotted against a celestial being without making a sound. If the blood fiend race's patriarch had not been unprepared and underestimated him, he would not have been killed by the broken ancient sword. Zhun Xiaoyao's move had completely shocked everyone. Chapter 365. Blood floated in the sky, and heaven and earth trembled. When an honorable martial artist died, there would be all kinds of strange phenomena. Zhun Xiaoyao looked at the scene of the honorable martial artist dying, but his expression was rather calm. As expected of the great killing weapon bestowed by grandfather. Zhun Xiaoyao smiled slightly. Jiang Daoshu didn't just give him a defensive ancient armor. He even gave him this great killing weapon. This damaged ancient sword was a sword given to an ancient ancestor of the Jiang family, and it had always been enshrined in the Jiang family's ancestral hall. This time, Zhun Xiaoyao would probably encounter many dangers in the burial ground, as well as all kinds of indescribable terrors. Therefore, Jiang Daoshu gave this damaged ancient sword that contained the aura of the Jiang family's ancestor to Zhun Xiaoyao and let him carry it with him. This kind of protective treasure wasn't like an emperor weapon. An emperor weapon usually needed a person to activate it in order to unleash its power. For example, even if Zhun Xiaoyao carried the Pan Huang sword, he wouldn't be able to unleash 1/10,000th of its power. However, this kind of ancient artifact was different. It could operate on its own, and there was no need for Zhun Xiaoyao to activate it. It was also a life-saving trump card. And now, the ancient sword had indeed come in handy. As soon as it was activated, it killed an honorable martial artist. The surroundings were shocked, and the crowd was terrified. Zhun Xiaoyao was simply a cunning old fox. Even an honorable martial artist died in his hands. Who would dare to believe it? Too terrifying. He even dared to scheme against an honorable martial artist. This son of God of the Zhun family is simply too terrifying. No wonder the son of God of the Zhun family is so fearless, and his expression doesn't change even if Mount Tai collapses in front of him. So it turns out that he has this kind of backing. However, now that he has activated this great killing weapon, the other emperors are already on guard. It's almost impossible to kill another emperor. There were also some burial ground creatures who saw that the blood fiend ancestor's death was mainly because he underestimated the enemy and was completely unguarded. This was why he was schemed against by Zhun Xiaoyao. The other buried emperors were not fools, they obviously would not lower their guard against Zhang Xiaoyao. Don't delay any longer. Let's attack together. I don't believe that this lad can still take out so many killing weapons. The heaven-devouring demonic python race's burial emperor said coldly. Hearing the heaven-devouring demonic python race's burial emperor's words, Zhang Xiaoyao laughed instead. A mottled bronze tower and a guardian talisman appeared beside him once more. Both of them radiated with extraordinary ripples. These two ancient weapons were no weaker than the ancient sword and ancient armor. The buried sovereign of the heaven-devouring demonic python clan was at a loss for words. Zhang Xiaoyao's divine fire realm cultivation was clearly just an ant-like existence in his eyes. However, he couldn't do anything to this ant in his eyes. There was no need to mention how sullen this feeling was. If you want to kill this son of God, come at me. If I take a step back, it's my loss. Zhang Xiaoyao stood with his hands behind his back, his aura leisurely. That kind of attitude was even more aloof and superior than the buried emperor's. If it wasn't for the huge difference in cultivation, everyone would even think that Zhang Xiaoyao was the stronger one. Awesome. I can't find any other words to describe it. A burial ground creature said in a daze. If I can be as arrogant as the son of God of the Zhang family for once in my life, then my life will not be in vain. Many creatures exclaimed. To be honest, although Zhang Xiaoyao was standing on the opposite side of the burial ground, sometimes they had to submit to him. Zhang Xiaoyao's bearing was too aloof. How dare you? Tianming burial emperor and the others no longer pretended to be arrogant and started to get serious. Tianming burial emperor reached out with one hand, and a terrifying demonic palm appeared in the void, like a pitch-black curtain that covered the sky. The sky-devouring demonic python race's burial emperor also attacked. A 10,000 feet long demonic python phantom appeared, wanting to devour Zhang Xiaoyao. The sky spider demon venerable also used a great divine ability. His 8 arms slapped out, and terrifying cracks appeared in the void. The corpse refining sect's sect master controlled the corpse emperor and attacked. As for the dragon skeleton burial emperor, it was held back by Arju. The old man Joyo was fighting with the ghost-masked burial emperor. The Rakshasa burial emperor and the dead spirit burial emperor were also severely injured by the ghost-masked burial emperor, so they didn't attack for the time being. The Shura monarch felt like he was not involved from the beginning to the end. The fallen winged race's burial emperor's expression changed for a long time, but he didn't attack in the end. At this moment, the 4 burial emperors attacked together. That kind of power was simply indescribable. The entire burial ground seemed to be boiling. If it wasn't for the special environment of the burial ground and the sturdy laws of heaven and earth, perhaps the 4 burial emperors were enough to tear this world apart. Zhang Xiaoyao's expression remained unchanged in the face of such overwhelming attacks that felt like a raging ocean. In front of him, the broken ancient sword, the giant bronze pagoda, the guardian talisman, and other ancient artifacts automatically released brilliance. They also had a monstrous aura. The broken ancient sword was given to him by Jiang Daoshu, and the giant bronze pagoda and the guardian talisman were already given to him by the 18th ancestor. The deafening sound poured out in all directions, and the fierce magic power swept out in all directions. Some of the weaker burial ground beings were directly shaken by the aftershock and vomited blood. However, Zhang Xiaoyao was like a reef in the waves, not moving at all. However, if one looked closely, they would be able to see that Zhang Xiaoyao's body was slightly trembling. Obviously, it wasn't easy to resist this power. If it weren't for Zhang Xiaoyao's freakishly strong physical body, the aftershock would have torn apart the other prodigy's bodies. How many more attacks can you block? Tianming burial emperor's eyes were cold. It was obviously unrealistic for Zhang Xiaoyao to rely on a few ancient artifacts to avoid this disaster. Zhang Xiaoyao himself understood this. Sigh, do I really have to alert the old team leader and the others? Zhang Xiaoyao secretly sighed. If he had a choice, Zhang Xiaoyao actually didn't want to use his family's power. After all, it would be troublesome for the Zhang family to make a move in the burial ground. Just as Zhang Xiaoyao was thinking. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying aura rose from the depths of the 10,000 spirit graveyard. That aura wasn't the aura of death, and it obviously didn't come from an expert of the burial ground. That's. The pupils of Tianming Burial Emperor and the others suddenly shrank. That aura even caused them to feel extreme shock and astonishment. Arju, who was fighting with the dragon skeleton Burial Emperor, also had a flicker of light in his eyes after sensing that aura. Is it him? The aura that suddenly surged in the depths of the 10,000 spirit graveyard changed the entire battle. Then, a terrifying and boundless saber light suddenly swept across the sky and slashed over. The saber slashed across the sky, as if it had torn the sky in half. The huge spatial crack was like a wound in the sky, traversing thousands of miles across the firmament. The saber slashed straight at Tianming, Burial Emperor, and the others. Heavenly Master. Feeling the terrifying aura of the saber, Tianming Burial Emperor and the others' faces changed drastically. The Burial Emperors, who had always been high and mighty and looked down on the billions of living beings in the burial ground, had a look of shock in their eyes for the first time. There was also a vague sense of fear. That saber was the might of a heavenly master. Chapter 366. After the 9th level of the Sage Realm, it was the 7th level of the Supremacy Realm. As the Supremacy Realm experts were high above, everyone called them the Supremacy. However, the Supremacy Realm was also divided into 7 levels. Quasi-Supremacy, Supremacy, Lesser Heavenly Supremacy, Greater Heavenly Supremacy, Greater Heavenly Supremacy, Creation Supremacy, and Chaos Supremacy. Other than the quasi-supremacy, most of the ordinary supremacies were ordinary supremacies. Above that level, the lesser heavenly supremacy experts were even rarer. The difficulty of advancing to the 7th level of the Supremacy Realm was comparable to the previous 9 levels of the Sage Realm added together. One could imagine how big the gap was. At that moment, the blade light that swept across thousands of miles carried the might of a heavenly supremacy. Even if it was just a lesser heavenly supremacy, it was not something that the supremacies could resist. Soul Reaping Bell. Tianming Burial Emperor summoned the sub-emperor weapon, Soul Reaping Bell. The rest of the buried emperors also unleashed their strongest moves in an attempt to defend against the saber attack. Rumble. The blade seemed to have shattered the heavens. Tianming Burial Emperor was still fine as he was one of the top 3 experts in the Burial Earth 10 regions. He was only pushed back. However, the other 3 Burial Emperors were not so lucky. The Sky Spider Demon Supremacy and the Sky-Devouring Demonic Python Race Burial Emperor both spat out a mouthful of blood. Blood splattered everywhere as the ground collapsed. The Corpse Refining Sect Master was even more miserable. The Corpse Emperor that he summoned was completely intact and took the blade head-on. The Corpse Emperor, whose body was incomparably tough and comparable to a Supremacy Realm expert, was split into 2 by the blade. No. The Corpse Refining Sect Master's eyes were bloodshot as he roared. Most of his strength was entrusted to the Corpse Emperor. After the Corpse Emperor was destroyed, his combat strength was no different from a quasi-supremacy. This sudden turn of events caused everyone to be stupefied. No one expected the situation to take such a turn. In the depths of the 10,000 spirits graveyard, a majestic figure slowly stepped out. With every step he took, the heavens seemed to tremble and ripples appeared in the void. It was a handsome and majestic middle-aged man. His eyes were filled with vicissitudes of life and his black hair fell to the back of his feet. There were countless scabs all over his body, covered with dust accumulated over time. In his right hand, he held a saber that was as tall as a man. The blade of the saber was stained with dark red blood. The apocalyptic saber light from earlier had come from his hand. This figure's aura was like an abyss, like a devil, causing even Supreme Being experts to feel fear in their eyes, and they couldn't help but feel terrified. He was none other than the figure that had sat cross-legged in the depths of the myriad spirits graveyard like a clay statue. After sensing Jun Xiaoyao's aura, he woke up. It was as if a sleeping lion had awoken, shaking the mountains and rivers with a single roar. Little Empyrean cultivation, could it be you? Tianming, Zhuanghuang, and the others' eyes shrunk when they saw the figure. They thought of the terrifying calamity that had befallen them more than 10 years ago. Even though they were supremes, they didn't dare to get too close. This man was the follower of the forbidden figure of the Jun family at that time. However, even though he was only a follower, his cultivation was enough to sweep through everything. At this moment, the middle-aged man's eyes were incomparably cold, and there was a murderous intent in them. It was as if in his eyes, Tian Ming, Zhuang Huang, and the others were just lambs waiting to be slaughtered. The middle-aged man's gaze first fell on Arju. Arju had also noticed him a long time ago. "You've been guarding this place all this time, Demon King Li Xin." Arju's eyes also showed a hint of emotion. The middle-aged man's gaze finally fell on Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao also looked at the man who suddenly appeared. To be honest, he was puzzled. Could this man have been guarding the depths of the myriad spirits graveyard all this time? However, Jun Xiaoyao could feel that this man didn't have the slightest intention of killing him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used that saber to save him. "You are." Jun Xiaoyao paused. All the creatures of the burial ground present held their breaths. Where did this terrifying little Empyrean who suddenly appeared come from? The middle-aged man walked step by step in front of Jun Xiaoyao. After getting closer, Jun Xiaoyao realized that there were many shocking scars on this man's body. It was hard to imagine that after suffering such heavy injuries, this man still managed to survive. The middle-aged man looked at Jun Xiaoyao, and there was an unconcealable fluctuation in his eyes that were as dark as the abyss. There was a hint of gratification and love in his eyes. In the next moment, in front of all the creatures of the burial ground, this man slowly knelt down on one knee in front of Jun Xiaoyao. White-clothed divine King Jun Wuhui's subordinate, Li Xin of the 8 divine kings, greets the young master. The sonorous and powerful words seemed to make the heavens and earth tremble. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then all the creatures of the burial ground were dumbfounded, unable to believe it. A little Empyrean expert actually knelt down on one knee in front of Jun Xiaoyao. This was simply shocking, and goosebumps rose all over their bodies. However, when Tian Ming and the others heard this, their pupils shrank, and a hint of fear instinctively flashed across their eyes. The white-clothed divine King Jun Wuhui was the taboo figure of the Jun family who caused havoc in the eternal burial ground more than 10 years ago. A fierce person who killed his way into the depths of the burial ground and even sealed the entire burial ground. Until today, when they heard the 3 words Jun Wuhui, Tian Ming and the others still couldn't hide the fear in their eyes. However, the waves in everyone's hearts couldn't compare to the shock in Jun Xiaoyao's heart at this moment. Previously, he vaguely guessed that the taboo figure who caused havoc in the burial ground more than 10 years ago might be his father. However, he was never sure. Now, a corner of the secret was revealed. One of the 8 divine kings who used to be under his father's command had appeared. Moreover, his cultivation was so powerful. "Senior, please rise." Jun Xiaoyao wouldn't put on any airs in front of his father's loyal subordinates. Moreover, looking at the scars on Li Xin's body, Jun Xiaoyao could imagine that the battle in the burial ground was definitely not that easy. Li Xin was able to survive and guard the All-Spirits graveyard until now. This kind of loyalty was truly moving. "I, Li Xin, am willing to go through water and tread on fire for the Jun family for generations to come. Now, I will kill all enemies for the young master." Li Xin stood up, holding the Janmadao in his hand horizontally. A terrifying demonic aura gushed out from his body. The 8 desolates were shaken, the wilderness trembling. Groups of stars swayed, the heavens were destroyed. Li Xin, one of the divine king's 8 under Jun Wuhui, was known as the Demon King. His Janmadao could cut through the sun, moon, and stars. On the other side, Arju, who was fighting with the dragon skeleton burial emperor, saw this scene and slightly gasped. Although she had polychoria and extraordinary strength, she was only at the bottom of the divine king's 8. As for Li Xin, he had the blood of the ancient demon god flowing in his body. He was one of Jun Wuhui's best generals. "I didn't expect that the survivor of the past would be so lucky to survive until now. However, although you are a little heavenly lord, you are seriously injured. How much strength do you have left now?" Although Tianming Burial Emperor and the others looked extremely serious, they didn't immediately retreat. Li Xin's body was full of wounds. Although his aura was shocking, who knew if he was an arrow at the end of its flight? Most importantly, the seal of the burial ground was about to be broken. When the sealed burial ground boss appeared, even Li Xin wouldn't be able to save the situation. Li Xin's eyes coldly looked at Tianming Burial Emperor and the others. The Janma Dao in his hand was pointed at the burial emperors. You have disrespected the young master. Pay with your lives. Chapter 367. Li Xin's black hair danced in the wind as his demonic aura surged. He looked like a demon king that was born. It was hard to imagine that Li Xin, one of the King of Gods 8, had such a domineering aura. What about the white-robed King of Gods, Jun Wuhui, who had subdued the King of Gods 8? This is too terrifying. Is he really the follower of the taboo character of the Jun family? Yeah. With such an aura, I would believe it if you told me that he was the one who started the chaos in the burial ground. The creatures of the burial ground who were watching the show hid far away, fearing that they would be affected. Li Xin's aura was too powerful. It was as if a demon king was born. The aura of a junior heavenly lord poured out. It was not something that could be withstood. He was severely injured back then, and his strength has fallen to rock bottom. If we attack together, we might have a chance of winning, Tianming Burial Emperor shouted. As one of the top 3 powerhouses in the burial ground 10 regions, Tianming Burial Emperor's cultivation was also at the peak of the Supreme Being realm. He was only one step away from becoming a junior heavenly lord. However, it was this one step that had hindered Tianming Burial Emperor for many years. It was extremely difficult to break through to the Supreme Being realm. If one did not have the talent and opportunity, they might be stuck at this cultivation level forever. The reason why Tianming Burial Emperor wanted to break through the sealed burial ground was to find an opportunity to break through in the burial ground. However, he had to deal with Li Xin first before he could talk about the next step. Hearing Tianming Burial Emperor's words, the Sky Spider Overlord, the Sky-Devouring Demonic Python Clan's Burial Emperor, and the Corpse Refining Sect's sect leader gritted their teeth and attacked. Right now, the group of buried emperors were all grasshoppers on the same rope. They were bound together for good or ill. Kill. Tianming Burial Emperor attacked first. He activated the Boundary Emperor weapon, the Soul-Reaping Bell. A terrifying bell wave spread out and shattered the surrounding space. The Sky Spider Overlord also attacked. His 8 arms performed the 8 Spiders' demonic seal, which was extremely powerful. The Corpse Refining Sect's sect leader did not have enough strength. His biggest support, the Corpse Emperor, had been cut in half by Li Xin. The Sky-Devouring Demonic Python Clan's Burial Emperor also attacked. The demonic python's shadow swallowed the world. It could be said that the full power of a supreme being was simply indescribable. The entire burial realm was trembling. Heaven and earth were overturned, as if the world was going to be destroyed. The burial earth creatures who were watching the show had long hidden far away, watching from afar. In the face of such destructive power, Li Xin stood tall and straight, holding the horse-slaying broadsword in his hand. His whole person was like a pillar supporting the sky. Even if the sky collapsed, it would not bend his spine. Sky Demon 7 slashes, reverse slash. Li Xin held his saber with one hand and slashed horizontally. A 30,000-meter-long astral saber swept across the sky, shattering the void and causing the blood-red clouds to collapse. All sorts of runes imbued with demonic will were imprinted in the void as the energy saber slashed out. Bang! With a single slash, the Tianming Burial Emperor and the others were knocked back once again. The Corpse Refining Sect Master and the others who were slightly weaker spat out mouthfuls of blood. Their bodies looked like they were about to shatter. Seeing this, Li Xin took a step forward and tore open the void. In an instant, he appeared before the Sect Master of Corpse Refining Sect. Seeing Li Xin appear 3 feet away from him in an instant, the Sect Master of Corpse Refining Sect was so shocked that his soul almost left his body. Having been accompanied by corpses all year round, he felt true death. Die. Without another word, Li Xin slashed down with his saber. The blood-red astral saber intertwined with runes and directly split the Sect Master of Corpse Refining Sect into 2. His physical body and primordial spirit had been completely annihilated. The second honorable expert had fallen. There was an uproar and the crowd was terrified. If they did not see it with their own eyes, who would believe that an honorable expert would die so easily? Moreover, this was already the second honorable expert that had fallen. Could it be that today is the bloody day of the Burial Earth Burial Emperor? A Burial Earth creature said in a daze. Damn it. Seeing that the sect master of corpse refining sect had fallen, the Sky Spider Overlord and the others looked gloomy. On the other side, the old man Ju Yu and the Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor who were fighting with Ju and the Ghost-masked Burial Emperor looked terrible when they saw this scene. Vaguely, there was a trace of regret in their hearts. They should not have been so impulsive. Is this the strength of a junior Empyrean? The Azura Emperor who was watching the battle from the outside took a deep breath. There were 7 honorable realms, and each realm was a different realm. This saying was indeed true. In his opinion, those below the honorable realm were all ants. However, in the eyes of heavenly venerate level powerhouses, supremes like them were merely slightly larger ants. On the other side, the fallen winged race's burial emperor rejoiced in his heart. Fortunately, I held back and did not take revenge. Otherwise, thinking of that possibility, the fallen winged race's burial emperor felt a lingering fear. Indeed, only those who could survive could live for a long time. As for the Rakshasa burial emperor and the dead spirit burial emperor who were heavily injured by the ghost-masked burial emperor, they lost their will to fight after seeing the current situation. They were considered the weaker ones among the burial emperors. Now, they were heavily injured. Their only choice was to escape. Although it was not glorious for the burial emperors, there was nothing they could do. The 2 burial emperors looked at each other and turned around to break through the void. Can you leave? A cold voice that was like a demon god's whisper was heard. A terrifying saber aura swept across the area. In the next moment, the 2 burial emperors felt a pain on their waist. Their bodies were directly split into 2. At the same time, the blade aura also invaded their bodies. Their internal organs and primordial spirits were instantly crushed. The Rakshasa burial emperor and the dead spirit burial emperor had fallen. Rumble. Blood clouds piled up in the sky, and various blood-colored runes were branded in the void. This was the phenomenon of an honorable realm expert falling. Until now, Burial Realm had lost a total of 4 burial emperors. Don't hold back anymore. Go all out, he won't be able to hold on for long, Tianming burial emperor shouted coldly. He also noticed that the old wounds on Li Xin's body seemed to have begun to split open, and blood was oozing out. Back then, Li Xin followed Jun Xiaoyaro and swept through Burial Realm. Naturally, he also encountered many strong opponents. Therefore, he was left with a body full of terrifying injuries. If it was not for Li Xin's powerful strength and his immemorial demon god bloodline, he might not have survived until now. At this moment, many old wounds on Li Xin's body burst open. Obviously, the situation was not good for him. Li Xin, don't force yourself. In the sky, Ju, who was fighting with the dragon skeleton burial emperor, shouted. As one of the King of Gods 8, they naturally had a comrade-like friendship between them. Senior. Jun Xiaoyaro saw this and his face changed. He was not willing to see Jun Wuhui's old subordinates fall in front of his eyes. Jun Xiaoyaro would not allow this to happen. Young lord, don't worry. This is my mission. If they dare to harm you, they will definitely die. Li Xin's black hair danced wildly as if he was possessed. Terrifying demonic runes spread out from his body. Demon god transformation. Li Xin roared into the sky, and the immemorial demon god bloodline was pushed to the extreme. A pair of demonic wings grew out from his back, and a demonic armor condensed on his body. Li Xin's aura did not fall but instead rose, reaching a new height. Seeing this scene, Tianming Burial Emperor and the others were completely disappointed. No matter what would happen to Li Xin in the future, at least for now, their situation could only be described with one word. Danger. Chapter 368. Jun Wuhui was once the sequence 0 of the Jun family, the white-robed divine king. Not only did his talent and cultivation reach a height that ordinary people could not reach, his vision was also far beyond ordinary people. To be able to be chosen by Jun Wuhui as one of the divine king's 8, Li Xin naturally had his merits. The immemorial demon god bloodline was only one of them. More importantly, Li Xin's loyalty and willpower made Jun Wuhui admire him greatly. Therefore, he was willing to train him. At this moment, even though Li Xin was suffering from a serious illness, he still wanted to seek justice for his master's son, Jun Xiaoyao. Using the demon god transformation, Li Xin's strength increased again. His blade slashed across the sky, cutting through the sky. Sky Demon 7 slashes, blade of world destruction. A pitch-black blade light appeared. It was 10,000 feet long as it slashed across. This blade looked like it was going to destroy the world. All kinds of Tao of destruction appeared, as if it was going to destroy 10,000 miles of the sky. At this point in the battle, Tian Ming, Burial Emperor, and the others could only use their full strength to delay until Li Xin could not hold on anymore. But the problem was, they could not hold on. Li Xin, who used the demon god transformation, had a surging aura, like a demon god going crazy. Tian Ming, Burial Emperor, and the others who were a level lower than Li Xin naturally could not resist. They were beaten until they coughed out blood and retreated. Li Xin alone swept away the Burial Emperors, displaying the power of the Divine King's 8. Looking at these Burial Emperors who were usually high and mighty, looking down on all living things, they were now in such a sorry state. The Burial Earth creatures who were watching the battle from afar did not know what to feel. It turned out that the Burial Emperors who were high up in the clouds could also be in such a sorry state. Everyone once again recalled that Li Xin had knelt down in front of Jun Xiaoyao with one knee. Thinking about it this way, Jun Xiaoyao's status was much higher than these Burial Emperors, wasn't it? This is too terrifying. Not only is the Jun family's son of God a monster, but the energy he can mobilize is also so terrifying. That's right. A legendary powerhouse at the Heavenly Lord level would fight to the death for him. Who else could have such treatment? Even in an immortal power, a celestial venerable powerhouse had the status of an ancestor. This was a powerhouse who could be considered to have a strong foundation. But have you ever seen an old ancestor kneel to a junior disciple? Perhaps only Jun Xiaoyao, the son of the white-clothed God King, could receive such extraordinary treatment. Just as all kinds of thoughts flashed through everyone's minds. The battle over there had already reached its climax. The void was completely shattered, turning into a pitch-black space turbulence. Amidst the spatial turbulence, Li Xin killed the buried sovereign of the heaven-devouring demonic Python clan with a single slash. Then, he once again activated the great divine ability of the primordial fiend celestial lineage. A devil king phantom appeared behind him, and with a slash of his saber, all 8 of Heaven Spider Demon Venerable's arms were severed. The heavenly Spider Demon Venerable died amidst a series of roars and screams. In the end, only Tian Ming Burial Emperor was left holding on bitterly. Damn it! Just hold on a little longer. Just hold on a little longer. Tian Ming Burial Emperor pushed his strength to the limit. He was also giving it his all. As long as he could hold on until Burial World broke out of its seal, Li Xin would have no way to survive when the top powerhouse of Burial World revive. Li Xin also saw through Tian Ming Burial Emperor's thoughts. However, would he give Tian Ming Burial Emperor a chance to live? Since he dared to attack Jun Xiaoyao, he should have the resolve to fight with his life. Even if he was an honorable powerhouse, it was the same. Sky Demon 7 slashes, Demon God's saber. Li Xin held the saber with both hands, and the law of destruction wrapped around the saber. With one slash, it tore apart the vast expanse. Heaven Netherworld Reincarnation Grand Art. Tian Ming Burial Emperor also used his trump card. A pitch-black seal appeared, as if it had turned the world upside down, and death aura filled the universe. Fart. However, after this move, Tian Ming Burial Emperor's move was still broken. His entire body, together with his primordial spirit, was split into 2, and was directly destroyed by Li Xin. The top 3 powerhouses of Burial Earth 10 regions had fallen. However, Li Xin did not keep his saber. His gaze once again turned to Old Man Joyo and Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor. In fact, the 2 of them had wanted to leave long ago, but they were entangled by Arju and the ghost-masked Burial Emperor, and could not escape at all. Die. Li Xin's eyes were indifferent, as if the god of death had passed through. Wherever he passed, he would reap the lives. There was no suspense. Old Man Joyo and Dragon Skeleton Burial Emperor could not do anything to the ghost-masked Burial Emperor and Arju. With Li Xin's addition, the result was obvious. These two honorable powerhouses followed in the footsteps of Qianming Burial Emperor and the others, and fell directly. At this point, the group of Burial Emperors who tried to kill Jun Xiaoyaro had all fallen, and none of them survive. Dead silence. The entire world was deathly silent. All the living beings in Burial Earth were silent, and they did not dare to make a sound. Because they were already stunned by the scene in front of them. A total of 9 Burial Emperors had fallen. This was unacceptable to the 10 regions of Burial Earth. It simply caused their souls to tremble. More than 10 years ago, there was a great calamity in Burial Earth. However, that level of calamity was not something that ordinary living beings in Burial Earth could come into contact with. Therefore, they only heard about it as a legend. And now, these 9 Burial Emperors had fallen in front of them. This kind of shock and impact was not something that hearsay could compare to. Not only these ordinary living beings, even the Shura Emperor and the fallen winged race Burial Emperor took a deep breath. As honorable powerhouses, they could not hide their shock. Li Xin's cold gaze also fell on the Shura Emperor and the fallen winged race Burial Emperor. The two powerhouses' minds instantly tensed up. The fallen winged race Burial Emperor subconsciously flapped the grey wings on his back, and directly broke through the void. He ran away. Seeing the fallen winged race Burial Emperor running away in panic, all the living beings in Burial Earth were stunned. Li Xin only glanced at him, and he scared the fallen winged race Burial Emperor away. Please, are you still a Burial Emperor? All the living beings in Burial Earth's 3 views were about to collapse. How could he be called a Burial Emperor? He was more like a coward. However, this also proved that the Demon King Li Xin had a great deterrent power. Li Xin retracted his gaze. Since they did not attack Jun Xiaoyaro, Li Xin was too lazy to do anything. Looking at Li Xin who was riding on the horse, even Arju murmured softly, "Only the Demon King Li Xin can ride on the horse." This was the evaluation of Li Xin by the living beings in the Huangtian mystic realm. Who would have thought that the Demon King of this generation was actually hiding in the depths of Burial Earth with a body full of hidden injuries? At this moment, even Jun Xiaoyao's eyes revealed a hint of admiration. His father's judgment of people was really good. Jun Xiaoyao also looked forward to when Yi Yu, Yang Qingying, and the others grew up in the future, they would become top powerhouses like Li Xin and Arju. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyao seemed to have noticed something. He looked into the distance and said, "It seems that there are still some rats spying in the dark." Li Xin also said with a deep gaze, "Young master, don't worry. Those rats will not dare to show themselves. If they do, they will die." The rats they were talking about were naturally the other Burial Emperors of the 10 regions of Burial Earth. The 10 regions of Burial Earth could not only have 9 powerhouses like the Qianming Burial Emperor. Forces like the Nether King Palace and the Corpse Dragon Clan could not only have 1 Burial Emperor. However, at this moment, those Burial Emperors were spying in the dark, but they did not dare to show themselves. As for why they did not dare to show themselves, very simple, they were frightened by Li Xin's unparalleled demonic might. Chapter 369. At this moment, in the entire Burial world, there was no sound at all. All the Burial Earth living beings who were watching the show seemed to have become mutes, unable to make a sound. The heavens knew that they were there to witness Jun Xiaoyao's demise. In the end, they witnessed the fall of 9 Burial Emperors. If they did not see it with their own eyes, none of the Burial Earth living beings would believe that this matter was real. Those were the high and mighty Burial Emperors who looked down on the Burial Earth. He was actually killed as if he was chopping melons and vegetables. All the Burial Earth living beings felt their scalps go numb at this moment, and their hearts felt like they had fallen into an ice cave. Jun Xiaoyaro defeated the 10 minor kings with his own strength. The Son of God was invincible. As for Li Xin, he also killed 9 Burial Emperors with his own strength. His demonic aura shook the Burial Earth. Were both of them so fierce? Too strong, really too strong. Lang Huan's heart was trembling. She was not trembling because of Li Xin's demonic aura, but because of Jun Xiaoyao. The reason was simple. Li Xin was fighting for Zhun Xiaoyao. In other words, Zhun Xiaoyao was the root cause of the 9 burial emperors' death. A man not only had powerful strength, but he could also mobilize such a terrifying person to fight for him. Lang Huan was completely convinced. Only a man like Zhun Xiaoyao was qualified to conquer her and win her heart. Compared to Zhun Xiaoyao, even the most outstanding sky prides were like chickens and dogs, small and insignificant. At this moment, Zhun Xiaoyao's threat was temporarily lifted. The reason why it was temporary was because there were still some burial emperors watching in the dark. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that Li Xin's condition did not seem to be good. He dispersed his demon god transformation, and the old injuries all over his body burst open. A trace of blood also flowed from the corner of his mouth. After all, Li Xin's internal injuries were very serious. Plus, he had used martial arts, so it was impossible for him to be completely fine. Senior Li Xin, your injury. Zhun Xiaoyao frowned. It doesn't matter. I, Li Xin, may not be able to deal with the terrifying existence in the depths of the burial world, but it's not a problem for me to deal with the burial emperors of the burial Earth 10 regions. I'll kill one on sight. Li Xin deliberately said such threatening words, while his eyes swept to the distance. In an instant, the auras of the buried emperors that were hidden in the dark all retracted. Clearly, none of the buried emperors were willing to stand out at this time. Furthermore, Burial Realm was about to be unsealed. Not to mention the great terror in the depths of the Burial Realm. Just the Burial Earth Big Boss sealed under the 10,000 spirit graveyard was enough to make Li Xin suffer. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed as he looked at Li Xin's injuries. He suddenly raised his hand, and the blood in his body surged. In the end, he forced out a drop of bright golden blood from his palm. The blood seemed to contain vigorous vitality and the special mysterious power of the sacred body of the ancients. Young master, this is... Li Xin's expression turned serious. This is the blood essence of the sacred body of the ancients. It should be helpful for the hidden injuries of your physical body, Zhun Xiaoyao said. The sacred body of the ancients itself could also be regarded as a great medicine of flesh and blood. Every drop of blood was extremely precious. Not to mention the condensed blood essence. In addition, Zhun Xiaoyao had the sacred body of the ancients that had broken the 10 shackles. Therefore, the condensed blood essence of the sacred body had a richer and purer energy. It should be helpful for the recovery of Li Xin's physical body. Young master, this can't. Li Xin was just about to refuse when he saw Zhun Xiaoyao's irrefutable eyes. That kind of eyes were deep and firm. In a trance, Li Xin seemed to have seen his former master. That gaze was almost exactly the same. Thank you for your gift, young master. Li Xin didn't say anything. He silently accepted it and directly refined it. A vigorous vitality surged in Li Xin's body. His physical condition quickly stabilized. Although the hidden injuries couldn't be directly healed, at least they wouldn't worsen. Young master, you can leave for now. The burial realm is about to change. Li Xin's face was solemn. Even with his cultivation as a lesser celestial lord, he had such an expression. It was obvious that the situation was indeed not good. The entire reincarnation pool was the center of the burial realm's seal. Now that it had been damaged and couldn't be repaired, the seal would collapse. However, at the moment, even Li Xin didn't have the ability to repair the seal. If the burial realm broke the seal, the first to bear the brunt would probably be Zhun Xiaoyao and the others. Then, it would be the Zhun family. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes were deep. He said, Senior Li Xin, is father guarding the depths of the burial realm? When he asked this question, even with Zhun Xiaoyao's calm personality, he couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. After all, Zhun Xiaoyao had never seen his cheap father since he was born. He was no longer in the Jianghu, but there had always been legends about him. Yes, and no, Li Xin said. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes revealed a strange look. What did this mean? The Zhun family didn't tell young master because they didn't want young master to bear too much pressure now. When the time comes, young master will naturally know everything, Li Xin said. Zhun Xiaoyao heard this and nodded slightly. He didn't force Li Xin to say anything. But what is certain is that Lord is a hero. Li Xin's tone was deep and firm. Zhang Xiaoyaro sighed slightly. Since ancient times, heroes don't live forever. If possible, I would prefer father to be an ambitious and ruthless person. Zhang Xiaoyaro wasn't the kind of hero who selflessly contributed. On the contrary, Zhang Xiaoyao's personality was cold and selfish. He would only do things that benefited himself. Of course, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. If in the future, Zhang Xiaoyaro was strong enough to ignore all rules, then, it wasn't impossible to save the world while he was at it. But now, the most important thing was the Burial Realm's seal. Young master, please leave. Li Xin cupped his hands. He himself wouldn't leave. He would stay here forever. Young master, let's go. Arju also came to Zhang Xiaoyao's side. In this situation, even Li Xin couldn't do anything. It was even more impossible for Zhang Xiaoyaro to change anything. It seems that the Zhang family's son of God is going to leave. Of course he has to leave. If he doesn't leave, will he be killed by the Burial Realm's big shot? The Burial Realm creatures in the distance whispered to each other. In this situation, no matter what, Zhang Xiaoyaro couldn't stay. Not to mention the Burial Realm's big shot who was about to break the seal, even the Burial Realm's emperor who was hibernating in the dark hated Zhang Xiaoyaro to the bone. If there was a chance, they wouldn't mind making a move. Leave? Why should I leave? I still want to cultivate and break through in the living reincarnation pool, Zhang Xiaoyaro said lightly. He had already made the decision to cultivate in the living reincarnation pool. In the immortal ancient world, opportunities like this were rare. Zhang Xiaoyaro naturally wouldn't miss it. Young master, please reconsider, Li Xin said. Now wasn't the time to be brave. Zhang Xiaoyaro smiled and shook his head. He naturally wouldn't act like a hero. There was no way Zhang Xiaoyaro would do something as foolish as putting his life on the line. What if I say that I can seal the Burial Realm again? As soon as Zhang Xiaoyaro said that, the already quiet place became so quiet that one could even hear a pin drop. The Zhang family's son of God said, he can seal the Burial Realm? The Burial Realm creatures were dumbfounded. Chapter 370. Hearing Zhang Xiaoyao's words, the group of Burial Earth creatures was dumbfounded. Sealing Burial Realm? What a joke. Did he think that Burial Realm could be sealed just because he wanted to? Now that Burial Realm was about to be unsealed, unless Zhang Wuhui appeared again, who could seal Burial Realm? Not only the Burial Earth creatures, but even some of the Burial Earth emperors hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity, were stunned. Please, can't you write a draft for bragging? Although they admitted that Zhang Xiaoyaro was very monstrous and might become a top expert in the future. The problem was that Zhang Xiaoyaro was only in the Divine Flame Realm. A Divine Flame Realm junior wanted to seal Burial Realm? He was crazy. Is this a joke? That's right, it's definitely a joke. How is that possible? All the Burial Earth creatures shook their heads. This bragging was too big. Not to mention the Burial Earth creatures, even Li Xin and Arju were stunned. To be honest, if the one who said this was not Zhang Xiaoyaro, but someone else, they would definitely look at each other as if they were fools. However, since it was Zhang Xiaoyaro who said it, Li Xin naturally wouldn't mock him. Instead, he cupped his hands and said, Young master, this is not a joke. I understand. Do I look like I'm joking? Zhang Xiaoyao's expression was calm. He didn't look like he was joking at all. Young master, are you confident? Although he felt that it wasn't very likely, Li Xin still asked. He definitely didn't want Burial Realm to be unsealed. I'm confident, but I need your help. Zhang Xiaoyaro took a deep breath and said. If young master has any orders, Li Xin will definitely do it. Li Xin and Arju had no problem. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes revealed a trace of thought. He looked at the sky again, at the ghost-masked Burial Earth Emperor who didn't say a word. I also need your help, Zhang Xiaoyaro said, looking at the ghost-masked Burial Earth Emperor. He wasn't sure if the ghost-masked Burial Earth Emperor would help him, but he still had to ask. Seeing Zhang Xiaoyaro asking for help from the ghost-masked Burial Queen, the rest of the Burial Earth creatures widened their eyes. The ghost-masked female Burial Emperor, Her personality was famous for being aloof and cold. How could she possibly have such a kind action of helping others? However, what made everyone dumbstruck was that the ghost-masked female burial emperor's eyes flickered slightly under the mask, and then she nodded. F***CK, this is a world that only cares about looks. A group of burial earthmen were jealous. In their eyes, this arrogant and indifferent iceberg goddess-level figure, why is Jun Xiaoyaro so fond? This was intolerable. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled at the ghost-masked female burial emperor. That smile was pillously handsome. Even the ghost-masked female burial emperor was momentarily dazed. She wasn't a fan of looks, but this smile seemed to overlap with the blurry smile in her memory. To tell you the truth, I have mastered a sealing technique. However, with my own strength, it is obviously impossible for me to completely unleash its effects, let alone seal the burial realm. So, I need you to lend me your magic power and inject it into my body, Jun Xiaoyaro said. The sealing technique he was talking about was naturally the reward for signing in, the 7 seals against immortals. This sealing technique was mysterious and unpredictable, and its power was extremely strong. Unfortunately, Jun Xiaoyaro could only release one layer of the seal with his own strength. And this was far from being able to seal the entire burial realm. As for why Jun Xiaoyaro didn't directly impart the 7 seals against immortals to Li Xin and the others. This wasn't because Jun Xiaoyaro was stingy and unwilling to give it. It was because the 7 seals against immortals were extremely complicated. Even if he gave it to Li Xin, he wouldn't be able to use it in a short time. And because it was a reward for signing in, Jun Xiaoyaro directly comprehended it and mastered it. The current situation was critical, so it was naturally impossible to wait for Li Xin to comprehend the 7 seals against immortals. Therefore, Jun Xiaoyaro could only rely on the power of Li Xin and the others. No, young master, your body can't withstand the infusion of our magic power. Li Xin heard this and shook his head slightly. Arju also shook his head. This idea was too crazy. It doesn't matter. I have the sacred body of the ancients. After a long time of tempering, my physical body is able to withstand the power of magic power far beyond my cultivation level, Jun Xiaoyaro said in a firm tone. Not only did he have the sacred body of the ancients, but he also had the sacred body of the ancients that had broken through 10 layers of shackles. His physical body was able to withstand the infusion of magic power more than 10,000 times. Only in this way could the power of the 7 seals against immortals possibly seal the entire burial realm. Young master, Li Xin, Arju, and the others didn't want Jun Xiaoyaro to take the risk. Jun Xiaoyaro took a deep breath and said in a calm tone, "If my father was here, what would he choose? Would he run away directly, or would he give it his all?" Jun Xiaoyao's words made Li Xin and Arju completely speechless. At this moment, in their eyes, Jun Xiaoyaro seemed to be slowly merging with the white-robed figure that suppressed the heavens. He was the white-robed God King. The white-robed God King was him. Okay. Li Xin agreed. Arju could only nod silently. The ghost-masked burial emperor was also a little hesitant. After a long time, she spat out 4 cold and vague words from under the mask. Be careful. These words made Jun Xiaoyao's eyes reveal a hint of surprise. This ice-cold, murderous female burial emperor was actually concerned about others. Could it be that she was the iceberg type of Tsunda? After making a thorough decision, Jun Xiaoyaro was also ready to make his move. He stepped into the sky step by step. As far as the eye could see, the entire burial realm was under his feet. The depths of the burial realm were hazy. Even Jun Xiaoyaro couldn't see clearly. Would his father, Jun Wuhui, be in there? Father, if you're here, then I'll show you my ability. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand. Divine runes began to spread out from between his fingers. Those patterns intertwined in the void, like the traces of the movement of the stars in the sky, complicated and mysterious to the extreme. What a complicated divine pattern. Even Li Xin and Arju were surprised when they saw it. How could Jun Xiaoyaro control such a complicated divine pattern? Young master will be incredible in the future. Li Xin sighed slightly. In his eyes, Jun Wuhui was already a godlike existence. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, might even surpass his father in the end. Then what is the son of God of the Jun family doing? Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's actions, the burial realm creatures present were puzzled. Could it be that the son of God of the Jun family wants to seal the burial realm himself? Some of the burial realm creatures muttered. This was too puzzling. It was simply an act of confusion. Just as everyone was watching, Jun Xiaoyao's first seal of the 7 seals of immortal taboo was completed. As far as the eye could see, countless dense divine patterns intertwined in the void, as if forming a large net that covered the world. Just the first layer of the seal was already extremely shocking. It had a terrifying might that could seal the heavens and the earth. So terrifying. What kind of great divine ability is that? Heavens, why do I feel like the death chi in my body is being suppressed? As soon as Jun Xiaoyao made his move, everyone was terrified. This kind of terrifying power seemed to be able to confine and seal heaven and earth. And this was only the first seal of the 7 seals of immortal taboo. Everyone, now is the time, Jun Xiaoyao said. With his current strength, he could only unleash the first seal. Li Xin, Arju, and the burial realm queen saw this and made their moves at the same time. Surging magic power directly poured into Jun Xiaoyao's body. When the other living beings saw this scene, they almost stopped breathing. Was Jun Xiaoyao crazy? Chapter 371. The burial earth creatures present were not stupid. They could also see Jun Xiaoyao's move. Jun Xiaoyao controlled a terrifying sealing technique. However, with his own strength, he could not fully unleash the power of this sealing technique. Therefore, he needed to borrow the strength of Li Xin and the others. However, this was the most shocking part. Jun Xiaoyao was only at the divine fire realm, but he had to withstand the infusion of Li Xin and other top powerhouses. Logically speaking, this was simply impossible. The body of a divine fire realm cultivator was like a kettle. And the cultivation of Li Xin and other powerhouses was like a boundless ocean. If Li Xin and the others poured their magic power into Jun Xiaoyao's body, the most likely thing that would happen was that Jun Xiaoyao's body would explode and he would die. It was precisely because of this that all the burial earth creatures thought that Jun Xiaoyao was crazy. Only a madman would come up with such a crazy idea. The son of God of the Jun family could have left safely, but he chose to court death. He's really crazy. Yeah, with such a talented cultivation, he didn't care about his life and took such a risk. All the burial earth creatures couldn't understand. It's good that he's dead. At least our burial earth's reputation can be salvaged a little. There were also burial earth creatures watching coldly from the sidelines. In the dark, some burial earth emperors were also communicating with their divine sense. They were all very surprised and observing the situation. Li Xin was a lesser heavenly venerable, the ghost-masked burial emperor was a peak supreme, and Arju was also a quasi-supreme. The 3 of them attacked at the same time. One could imagine the magic power fluctuations that could overturn heaven and earth. Although this kind of magic power wave was not offensive, just the degree of majesty was enough to explode the bodies of thousands of divine fire realm geniuses. Boom! Terrifying magic power surged like a tide, pouring into Jun Xiaoyao's body. Jun Xiaoyao felt as if there was an endless power erupting in his body. In an instant, he used the second seal of the 7 seals against immortals. Heaven and earth seemed to have turned into a cage. With the infusion of mana, Jun Xiaoyao's body began to turn crimson red. That was a sign that mana was about to overflow and break out of his body. Young master. Aju's expression changed slightly when she saw this. She had been guarding Jun Xiaoyao for the longest time. After all, she was his guardian. When she saw that Jun Xiaoyao was in a bad situation, her heart trembled. No problem, continue. Jun Xiaoyao's tone was firm. He pushed the power of the sacred body of the ancients to the extreme. He was born with the sacred body of the ancients, which had broken through all 10 shackles. His physical body was extremely tough, and the amount of mana he could contain was far greater than that of geniuses of the same level. Oh my god, he actually withstood it. The Jun family's son of God's body didn't explode. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao safe and sound, the living beings of the burial ground were left speechless. His neck felt like it was being strangled by a pair of invisible hands. Is there anything that the young master can't do? Lang Huan and Qin Xiana didn't know what to say. It seemed that in front of Jun Xiaoyaro, no problem was a problem. If this child can grow up safely, I'm afraid he will be another white-robed god king in the future. No, he might even be stronger. The Shura monarch also sighed with mixed feelings. He even seemed to see the horrifying scene of the burial ground being destroyed by Jun Xiaoyaro in the future. As for the burial emperors who were hiding in the dark, they were also shocked speechless. A junior that they didn't take seriously had done something that they didn't dare to imagine. The third layer. Jun Xiaoyaro continued to use the 7 seals of prohibition. Although to the outside world, Jun Xiaoyaro seemed to be safe and sound. Only Jun Xiaoyaro himself knew how dangerous it was to do such a thing. If he was not careful, his body would explode and he would die. Other than Jun Xiaoyaro, no one else dared to do so. Senior Li Xin, you don't have to worry. Continue to increase your magical power, Jun Xiaoyaro said again. Seeing this, Li Xin and the others could only increase their magical power output. An even more vast and terrifying wave of magical power surged into Jun Xiaoyao's body. Jun Xiaoyao instantly felt a tearing sensation, as if his body was about to be torn apart. Immortal bones of the great all-embracing heaven. Jun Xiaoyao activated the power of the immortal bones of the great all-embracing heaven again. Suddenly, the 160 immortal bones of the great all-embracing heaven that had been refined all over his body released immortal light at the same time. These immortal bones of the great all-embracing heaven were like nodes that stabilized Jun Xiaoyao's body so that it would not collapse. This was also why Jun Xiaoyao was so confident. Not only did he have the sacred body of the ancients, but he also cultivated one of the 9 great heavenly books, the immortal body of the great all-embracing heaven. It was because of this confidence that Jun Xiaoyao dared to do such a crazy thing. Otherwise, why would Jun Xiaoyao risk his life? Jun Xiaoyao would not do something like putting his life on the line. The 4th seal. Jun Xiaoyao continued to activate the 7 seals of the great all-embracing heaven, and the 4th seal was strengthened again. Its power was so strong that it sealed the sky and the earth and confined all directions. Even the seal of the burial realm, which was originally on the verge of collapse, seemed to be slowing down under this reinforcement. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao, it seemed that it was really possible for him to seal the burial realm again. The whole place was silent. All the creatures of the burial realm seemed to have a premonition in their hearts. Today, they might be witnessing an impossible miracle again, the 5th seal. When Jun Xiaoyao used the 5th seal of the 7 seals of the great all-embracing heaven, all the creatures could feel that the entire burial realm seemed to be isolated by a pair of invisible hands. Go quickly. A creature of the burial realm suddenly shouted. If they continued to stay here, they might be sealed in the burial realm forever, unable to leave. As this voice spread out, all the creatures of the burial realm hurriedly retreated. Those creatures of the burial realm who were watching the show, mocking, and coldly from the sidelines, now had a look of panic on their faces as they swarmed out of the burial realm. Damn it, the burial realm has been broken. Is it going to fail? In the dark, the burial realm's divine sense intertwined. However, they did not dare to show up to stop Jun Xiaoyao. Because the great demon Li Xin was still there. The 9 burial emperors had just fallen, so the remaining burial emperors naturally would not take the initiative to send themselves to death. The 6th seal. Jun Xiaoyao's body began to tremble slightly, and his body showed signs of collapsing. However, he also used the 6th seal of the 7 seals of the 7 seals of the great all-embracing heaven. There were millions of divine runes of various colors, intertwining in the void, turning the burial realm into a forbidden zone. Not only was the world sealed, even the various laws seemed to be imprisoned. This kind of terrifying seal made Li Xin's eyes flash with surprise. This kind of sealing technique was too powerful. When fully used, it could easily seal a supreme being. It's about time. Jun Xiaoyao let out a deep breath and began to withdraw. It was too difficult to use the 7th seal of the great all-embracing heaven. Moreover, with the current Jun Xiaoyao, even with the help of Li Xin and the others, it was difficult to use the 7th seal. However, The sixth seal of the great all-embracing heaven was enough to seal the entire burial realm. After all, the previous seal was only on the verge of collapse, not completely. It worked. Until now, Li Xin was still in a trance. The burial realm, which was about to break its seal, was sealed once again by Zhun Xiaoyao's efforts. Vaguely, one could hear a terrifying roar of unwillingness under the 10,000 spirits graveyard. It was the big boss of the burial realm that was sealed under the 10,000 spirits graveyard. It originally had the hope of breaking the seal, but in the end, it was blocked by Zhun Xiaoyao. Zhun Xiaoyao once again created an impossible miracle. Chapter 372. The originally trembling burial realm once again fell into silence. Although the 6 seals couldn't seal the burial realm forever, it was no problem to maintain it for at least a few decades or 100 years. Although for cultivators, a few decades or 100 years wasn't considered long. But at that time, Zhun Xiaoyao's cultivation would have probably reached an extremely terrifying level. At that time, wouldn't it be easy to sweep through the burial realm? Therefore, Zhun Xiaoyao didn't care if the sealing time was too short. As long as he was given time, even if the burial realm broke the seal, he could still suppress everything. Seeing burial realm being sealed again, the creatures of burial earth who had already escaped felt all sorts of mixed feelings. Who would have thought that the burial realm that was destined to break the seal would be sealed again by Zhun Xiaoyao alone? He had done what his father had done before. Like father, like son, this saying was true. Young master's methods, Li Xin is impress. Li Xin cupped his fists and was really convinced. Although Li Xin agreed before, he more or less had some doubts in his heart. But now, all the problems had vanished into thin air. No need to be like this. This burial realm wasn't sealed by me alone, but by the strength of everyone. Zhun Xiaoyao didn't take all the credit for himself. Now that the crisis was resolved and the burial realm was sealed, Zhun Xiaoyao also obtained the 9 Wonders Reincarnation Immortal Grass. This trip to the eternal burial realm could be considered to have ended perfectly. Zhun Xiaoyao's goals were all achieved. But Zhun Xiaoyao wasn't prepared to leave directly. Instead, he wanted to digest the great opportunity of the living being's reincarnation pool. Next, Zhun Xiaoyao also asked Li Xin and the others for their thoughts. Li Xin still wanted to continue guarding the 10,000 spirits graveyard. Zhun Xiaoyao didn't advise anything. This was Li Xin's display of loyalty. Moreover, the burial realm indeed needed a powerhouse to guard it. If there were any problems, they could be contacted in time. Zhun Xiaoyao's gaze looked into the depths of the burial realm. Although Li Xin didn't tell him the secrets of the burial realm. However, Zhun Xiaoyao seemed to be able to see his father, God King Zhun Wuhui. Back then, he had single-handedly swept through the burial realm, fighting against the great terror within. Zhun Xiaoyao was indeed very strong now, but he was only invincible among the younger generation. What Zhun Xiaoyao needed to do next was to surpass his peers step by step and even compete with the experts of the older generation. One of these days, I'll go deep into the burial world and meet those terrifying existences. There's also the reason why the eternal burial earth was created, and why Father sealed the burial realm away. I will unravel these secrets one day. Zhun Xiaoyao swore in his heart. With his current strength, even if he knew the secret of burial realm, he still wouldn't be able to help Zhun Wuhui. Therefore, becoming stronger was the only thing Zhun Xiaoyao needed to do. After the burial realm was sealed, the creatures in the outside world didn't leave. They were still immersed in shock. A self-deprecating smile appeared on Lang Huan's face. Your Highness, what's wrong? Qin Xiana noticed and asked with concern. Xiana, I thought that I was good enough for young Master Jun. Now, it seems that I thought too highly of myself. Lang Huan smiled bitterly and shook her head. It was hard to imagine that Lang Huan, who was ranked second on the burial earth beauty list, could say such words. Qin Xiana wanted to comfort her, but she found that it was indeed the case. Zhun Xiaoyao's excellence left them in the dust. On the other side, Zhun Xiaoyao prepared to enter the reincarnation pool to cultivate. However, before that, he looked at the ghost-masked burial emperor. Previously, the ghost-masked burial emperor said that she had something to talk to him about. When the ghost-masked burial emperor saw Zhun Xiaoyao's gaze, she turned and walked away. Zhun Xiaoyao also followed. Li Xin and Arju were tactful and didn't ask anything. In a quiet place, the ghost-masked burial emperor stopped. Zhun Xiaoyao also stopped at the same time. I'm curious. Who are you? The ghost-masked burial emperor had her back facing Zhun Xiaoyao as she asked. The burial emperor was wearing a black dress. She was tall and slender, like a mysterious and magnificent black rose. Zhun Xiaoyao. Zhun Xiaoyao said word by word. Really? The ghost-masked burial emperor asked. Otherwise? Zhun Xiaoyao said. When I woke up from my slumber, I was already a powerful burial emperor. However, in my memory, there were some scenes. Was it my previous life or something else? The ghost-masked burial emperor asked. Zhun Xiaoyao didn't really understand the relationship between the ghost-masked burial emperor and the ghost-masked girl and the ghost-masked woman. However, they had one thing in common, which was that they could use the power of the red spider lily. As for the red spider lily, Zhun Xiaoyao couldn't help but think of the foreign realm. It was rumored that in the foreign realm, there was an emperor clan called the red spider lily. It was a plant-type power, and its main body was the red spider lily that bloomed in the yellow springs. However, Zhun Xiaoyao didn't know much about the foreign realm, so he couldn't deduce anything. Karma is intertwined. Whether it's true or false, I don't know either. However, I can promise that if I find out the truth in the future, I will definitely come and find you. Zhun Xiaoyao said. Since the ghost-masked burial emperor had extended a helping hand, Zhun Xiaoyao would naturally return the favor. In the future, if he found out the truth about the ghost-masked girl, he would naturally tell her. However, I have another request. The ghost-masked burial emperor suddenly spoke. However, her tone was a little unnatural and intermittent, as if she had lost some of her previous coldness. What is it? Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes revealed doubt. There was something wrong with the ghost-masked burial emperor's tone. Can you hug this emperor? When the ghost-masked burial emperor said this, her back was still facing Zhun Xiaoyao. However, that slightly trembling voice clearly showed that the burial emperor's heart was not calm. Zhun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, was rather stunned. He never thought that the ghost-masked burial emperor would actually make such a request. What kind of existence was the ghost-masked burial emperor? The strongest expert of the burial Earth 10 regions, the noble and cold ice queen. She was an existence that all the men in the burial Earth 10 regions feared and admired. This kind of ruthless ice queen actually asked for a hug. This was too much of a contrast, right? If the other creatures of the burial Earth saw this scene, they would probably doubt their lives. Zhun Xiaoyao couldn't help but think that the ghost-masked burial emperor might really be an iceberg type of Tsunda. If you don't want to, then forget it. The ghost-masked burial emperor's figure moved and was about to leave. Wait. Zhun Xiaoyao spoke. The burial emperor stopped in her tracks. If the queen is willing to lend a helping hand, I am grateful. This matter is just a small matter. Zhun Xiaoyao said. As long as she didn't covet his body, anything was fine. Hugging wouldn't make her pregnant. Zhun Xiaoyao stepped forward and hesitated for a moment, but he still gently wrapped his arms around the burial emperor's waist. If it was anyone else who had the chance to get close to the burial emperor, they would probably be extremely excited and wouldn't even be able to control their hands. However, Zhun Xiaoyao's expression was very calm, without any excitement. The burial emperor's body was very cold, like a piece of ice. When Zhun Xiaoyao hugged her, her jade-like body trembled slightly, as if she had been electrocuted. A warmth that he hadn't felt in a long time spread out. However, in the next moment, Zhun Xiaoyao let go of his hand. There was a trace of inexplicable disappointment in the burial emperor's heart. However, she still said, "Thank you. When I find out the truth in the future, I will come and find you again." Zhun Xiaoyao turned around and left without any reluctance. After a long while, the ghost-masked burial emperor sighed faintly. She lifted the ghost mask on her face slightly with one hand. The corner of her jade-like face under the mask was already bright red. The ghost-masked burial emperor would also blush. The red spider lily blooms in the seven-colored sky, the flower falls and becomes an immortal for 1,000 years. I don't want to become an immortal, I only want to wait for your return in the vast mortal world. The female burial empress put on the ghost face mask again. Her body moved and disappeared without a trace.